Chapter 30:51. Someone ascended and attracted the power of the heavenly tribulation. Who ascended and attracted the aura of the heavenly tribulation? Could it be a Tao Void elite breaking through to Tao Saint? Western Mystic Mountain originally had 9 Tao Saints. If another Tao Saint elite is added, there will be 10 Tao Saints. Western Mystic Divine Realm's overall strength will definitely increase greatly. Everyone was aghast. Ascending to Tao Saint was not a small matter. In the human world, once one ascended to Tao Saint, the divine realm they were in would invite elites and hold a grand ceremony to celebrate. The elites in the palace walked out one after another and looked in the direction of the heavenly tribulation. Unfortunately, they could only see the area at the southern edge of Western Mystic Mountain. The tribulation clouds rolled in the sky, but they were blocked by a powerful divine aura. They could not see which mountain it was. Strange, looking at the aura of the heavenly tribulation, it doesn't seem like a Tao Void cultivator ascending to Tao Saint. Instead, it's somewhat like a Tao Void Great Tribulation. What kind of Tao Profound cultivator would condense a tribulation cloud of 300,000 miles in area for a Tao Void Great Tribulation? If this person is really a Tao Profound cultivator, he must be an extremely powerful leapfrog. Once he ascends to Tao Void, I'm afraid he can rival Middle Tao Void Realm, or even Upper Tao Void Realm. To think that Western Mystic actually has such a powerful Tao Profound cultivator. He will definitely be another Supreme Tao Saint in the future. Everyone was shocked and discussing. Even that incomparably arrogant Middle Mystic Hu people, Tao Profound Realm Tao Child, Hu Chong, also revealed a shocked and jealous expression at this moment. Chen Tianqing looked in the direction where the tribulation clouds appeared, his eyes full of disbelief. That was because the direction where the heavenly tribulation appeared was precisely where Strange Silence Peak was located. When Su Fong took the test at Profound Opening Gate, he had just ascended to Upper Tao Profound Realm not long ago. Without several 100,000 years of accumulation, it's impossible to break through to Tao Void Realm. The person transcending the tribulation now is definitely not him. Chen Tianqing's heart only calmed down after his analysis. Actually, Chen Tianqing's guess was right. The one transcending the tribulation now was not someone else, but precisely Su Fong. Accumulating and cultivating in Strange Silence Peak for several tens of thousands of years, he had king-grade medicinal pills, and also obtained large amounts of primordial energy from the cocoon inside Strange Silence Peak. In addition, Su Fong had already cultivated the Wuji Sutra of Jiuxuan to the 5th level, which was enough for him to reach the cultivation realm. Originally, it would have taken hundreds of thousands of years, or even longer, to break through to the Tao Void Realm. But now it was a matter of course. Su Fong originally didn't want to undergo the tribulation on Strange Silence Peak. That would cause too much of a commotion and attract too much attention. However, leaving the Western Black Mountain and entering the primal chaos was not an easy task. Furthermore, it was not that safe either. Therefore, Su Fong specially invited his senior apprentice brother Yin Patian to protect him and use his divine aura to cover Strange Silence Peak and its surroundings. As soon as Su Fong's tribulation aura was released, the terrifying aura of a breakthrough surged into the world and disappeared without a trace. Following which, tribulation clouds appeared, converging into a vast expanse of dark clouds that enveloped the skies above the Strange Silence Peak. The tribulation clouds were truly astonishing. It actually covered an area of more than 300,000 miles. Such an astonishing tribulation cloud was comparable to the Tao Saint heavenly tribulation of a Tao Void Realm expert. The Great Tribulation of the Tao Void Realm had a total of 9 calamities. It was 10 times more powerful than the Great Tribulation of the Tao Profound Realm. However, compared to Su Fong's cultivation base, the degree of danger was far less terrifying than the Great Tribulation of the Tao Profound Realm. Cultivators of the Tao Void Realm would go one step further in their search for the true meaning of the Great Tao. They would no longer have the same mysterious feeling towards the ethereal heavenly Tao as Tao profound realm cultivators. Instead, they would completely break away from the shackles of their predecessors. They would see everything as emptiness and then comprehend the true meaning within the emptiness. If they could see through the emptiness and obtain the true meaning of the great Tao from the emptiness, they would be able to become a saint in one step. That would be the Tao Saint realm. Tao Void realm cultivators could completely leave the profound world where the human race lived and survive in the primal chaos. Moreover, they could derive their own great Tao in the primal chaos where everything was void and display their peerless divine abilities. This little junior brother of mine is extraordinary, very extraordinary. No wonder Master thinks so highly of him and became the #1 genius of the human race. Compared to him, Chen Tianqing is still too far away. After passing through this tribulation, he will no longer be a genius, but a genuine powerful expert. I'm afraid it won't be long before he catches up to me, a Tao saint. Yin Patian watched Su Fang pass through the tribulation from afar. Seeing that the tribulation clouds had already formed, he was also very shocked. At this time, swoosh, the first wave of the heavenly tribulation descended with a loud bang. Su Fang sensed it and immediately discovered that within the aura of the heavenly tribulation there was an incomparably profound chi of origin. It actually contained a trace of primordial energy. The heavenly tribulation did not seem very powerful. However, with the addition of primordial energy, the power of the heavenly tribulation would definitely skyrocket by more than 10 times. However, although Su Fang's cultivation was only at the upper stage of the Tao Profound stage, he had already reached the height of the Tao Void realm long ago. Moreover, he was not an ordinary Tao Void realm cultivator, but an upper stage. Even if the heavenly tribulation was 10 times stronger than an ordinary Tao Void realm calamity, it would only pierce through the sky at the middle stage of the Tao Void realm. Why would Su Fang be afraid of anything? Whoosh! The aura of the first heavenly tribulation swept over in an instant and turned into shocking tribulation wind, tribulation fire, and tribulation lightning. With an earth-shattering force, it crashed towards Su Fang. Break for me! A burst of will exploded. Mana, Taoist rhymes, and will quickly condensed into a 9 suns wheel that rolled out and blocked the tribulation wind, tribulation fire, and tribulation lightning that poured down, causing an earth-shattering explosion. The heavenly tribulation that contained primordial energy was indeed shocking. Su Fang's 10,000 forms heavenly wheel at this time was enough to suppress an expert at the middle stage of the Tao Void realm. The result of the collision between the 9 suns heavenly wheel and the heavenly tribulation was that both sides were injured and shattered at the same time. The second heavenly tribulation came right after. It became even fiercer and more domineering. But it still could not threaten Su Fang. Using his will to condense the heavenly wheel, he released the heavenly wheel of yin-yang and the heavenly wheel of heaven and earth. He easily shattered the second heavenly tribulation and sent it flying in all directions. When Yin Patian saw the power of the heavenly tribulation, he was still worried for Su Fang. At this time, when he saw Su Fang casually shatter 2 heavenly tribulations in succession, he was once again shocked and sighed. Just as the third heavenly tribulation was still brewing, Yin Patian suddenly looked towards the sky in shock. His gaze passed through the outermost boundary of the Shixian world and saw the chaotic void within the endless domain. Not only Yin Patian, from the Shixian mountain, there were many powers of perception that were at the same height as Yin Patian, or even stronger than Yin Patian. They also looked towards the depths of the endless domain. A moment later, whoosh, a sound like a flood, as if it came from the ethereal heavenly Tao, suddenly came from the chaos outside the boundary into the Shixian mountain. Every cultivator could hear it clearly. But what most cultivators could not see was that in the endless domain far away from the Shixian mountain, the calm and dark void suddenly became chaotic. Ripples rippled and mysteries surged wildly, spreading in all directions as if something was erupting from within. The heavenly tide of chaos was about to erupt. Yin looked at Su Fang, who was undergoing the heavenly tribulation, and raised his eyebrows. How can it be so unlucky that the heavenly tide of chaos is erupting when Su Fang is undergoing the heavenly tribulation? From the heavenly tide of chaos appearance to the true eruption, only a mere 300 years had passed. And after Su Fang underwent the heavenly tribulation, he needed a long time to stabilize his realm. Even if he had the Xian Bao of time, it would be very difficult for him to reach the normal state of the lower Dao Void realm in a short time. Yin Patian shook his head and sighed. It seems that Su Fang will miss this heavenly tide of chaos. What a pity! But this is also good. If he shows off again in this heavenly tide of chaos, he will probably attract the jealousy of countless people. Following the appearance of the heavenly tide of chaos, the entire Shixian mountain began to boil. Those Dao Profound and Dao Void experts, who had been impatient for a long time, impatiently began to prepare to go to the heavenly tide of chaos. No one paid attention to Su Fang's heavenly tribulation anymore. Under Su Fang's great power, the heavenly tribulation was smashed into pieces. In the end, the ninth heavenly tribulation came aggressively, as if it wanted to swallow Su Fang and the entire Strange Silence Peak, completely erasing the existence of Su Fang and Strange Silence Peak. Su Fang used my lord's 10 directions seal, shattering the heavenly tribulation wind, heavenly tribulation fire, and heavenly tribulation lightning that came surging over. With the disappearance of the ninth heavenly tribulation, it meant that Su Fang's heavenly tribulation had ended at this time, and what was about to welcome was his advancement. Whoosh! A ray of auspicious light descended from the tribulation cloud, sweeping away the various auras of calamity just now. As soon as Su Fang absorbed the power of baptism into his body began to burn with heavenly tribulation fire. The power of advancement surged and swept wantonly in his body. Su Fang's physical body, Dao Palace, and Dharma body all began to shatter, and rapidly reconstructed and transformed amidst the shattering. After enduring this great pain for nearly a month, the impact power in his body finally gradually calmed down. This also indicated that Su Fang had crossed the limits of Dao Profound at this time, and became a Dao Void expert. This advancement is really too timely. To be able to advance to Dao Void realm before the human race's heavenly tribulation descends, it's all thanks to Saint Sovereign Xie Zhu's king-grade medicinal pills, and the primordial energy that the cocoon gave me. Su Fang's heart was brimming with great joy. That sense of urgency that suppressed in his heart before could finally be relaxed a little. Looking at the changes in his body again. His physical body, Dao Palace, and Dharma body were all 10 times more profound than Dao Profound realm. Even the primordial energy in the deepest part of Jiuxuan Dao Palace was more than 10 times more than before. His Dao heart and Dao body had undergone a considerable transformation. I reckon that with my current strength, it's not difficult to defeat an expert at the peak of Upper Dao Void realm, and I can even contend with an ordinary Dao Saint. However, it's very difficult to win. After all, Dao Saint and Dao Void are 2 completely different realms. How many Dao Saint experts were there in the entire human race? Those were all old monsters who had cultivated for countless eras. Cultivation, divine powers, Xian Bao, Su Fang simply could not compare with them. Although Su Fang was a powerful leapfrog, it was impossible for him to cross the huge gap between Dao Void and Dao Saint. Being able to have the qualifications to confront Dao Saints was already quite heaven-defying. No matter what, my current strength has already entered the ranks of the top experts. Chapter 3052. Little Junior Brother, congratulations! Yin Patian teleported over and glanced at Su Fang. A hint of shock flashed in his deep eyes. Although Su Fang's aura was very empty at this time, the feeling he gave Yin Patian was not like facing a newly ascended Void Dao cultivator, but a peerless Dao Saint at the same level as him. Thank you, senior brother, for protecting me. Su Fang cupped his fists and thanked Yin Patian sincerely. We are brothers, no need to thank me. Take these medicinal pills and recover some strength quickly. It would be best if you can make it in time for the chaos tide to erupt, but don't force yourself if you can't. With a thought, Yin Patian took out a storage ring and flew towards Su Fang. Su Fang caught the storage ring and sensed the space inside the storage ring, and was immediately shocked. There were actually 10,000 supreme-grade medicinal pills and 1,000 peak supreme-grade medicinal pills in the storage ring. There were also 5 medicinal pills, and they were actually king-grade medicinal pills. With so many medicinal pills of such high quality, with Yin Potion's identity and strength, it was definitely a huge fortune. Yin Potion's shocking generosity shocked Su Fang. Su Fang hurriedly refused. Senior brother, this is too precious, I can't accept it. It's just a little medicinal pill, just take it as a little token of senior brother, accept it. The chaos tide has appeared, the sovereign is probably going to call the higher-ups for a meeting soon, so I won't stay here. Yin Patian did not allow Su Fang to refuse. After saying that, his figure escaped into the void and disappeared without a trace. Su Fang also understood that Yin Patian also saw his potential, so he took out so many medicinal pills at once to get closer to him. The reality was like this. If your strength was not enough, no matter how close you were, you would not be valued by others. When you had enough strength or amazing potential, everyone would want to get close to you. Su Fang returned to Strange Silence Peak, and what awaited him were the shocked and reverent eyes of many cultivators under his command. These few years at Strange Silence Peak, quite a number of experts under Su Fang's command all advanced to Dao Profound Realm. Bai Ling and Qingyu both had Dao Profound strength. Du Zhixiang, this girl, successfully advanced to the Dao Profound Realm. But ever since having the pleasure of a man and woman with Su Fang the last time, the two people did not have any overly intimate actions anymore. The improvement of these cultivators under him could be said to be astonishing, but compared to Su Fang's speed of improvement, it was still far inferior. Moreover, the heavenly tribulation that Su Fang had attracted was so shocking, and he had successfully overcome it so easily. This shocked all the cultivators under him, and they naturally became unswervingly loyal to Su Fang. Su Fang entered the cave residence. Within the Fuyao Immortal's cave abode of time, he wantonly devoured medicinal pills to make up for the emptiness in his body caused by his advancement. He had stayed in Fuyao's cavern for more than 1,000 years. With the help of the extraordinary medicinal power of the king-grade medicinal pill, Su Fang's body was no longer as empty as before, but it was still not at the normal level of the lower realm of the Tao Su realm. Suddenly Su Fang's brows furrowed, ending his cultivation, and headed straight for the interior of Strange Silence Peak, arriving at the cave where that silkworm cocoon was located. These few years, Su Fang had continuously fused his own primordial qi, the blood threads of the heaven-piercing blood king vine, as well as his consciousness into the interior of the silkworm cocoon. Because he was worried that it would affect the life inside the silkworm cocoon, he continuously permeated and fused his blood threads and consciousness, but did not seize the body. However, there was a subtle connection between him and that silkworm cocoon, feeling as if it was a part of his body. Just earlier, Su Fang sensed that the interior of the silkworm cocoon emitted a movement, and the life nurtured within actually had some signs of being born. Su Fang analyzed that it was most likely due to the spiritual qi and world aura that Su Fang had plundered these few years, that the life inside the silkworm cocoon had already grown to a certain height. In addition, after he had successfully overcome the tribulation previously, that kind of auspicious baptism power that descended from the heavenly tribulation was also absorbed quite a bit by the silkworm cocoon. Therefore, it prompted the life inside the silkworm cocoon to be born. It's a pity that once that life is born, it will no longer be able to spit out the silk that contains primordial qi. I wonder what kind of monster the life born from the silkworm cocoon will be? Su Fang felt that it was a pity, but at the same time, he was filled with anticipation. However, it would not be so easy for that life to break out of the silkworm cocoon. As the life inside the silkworm cocoon had fused with Su Fang's blood essence and power, Su Fang felt a blood connection with it, and could even understand the life's consciousness. Su Fang could sense that the life still needed a large amount of energy to successfully break out of the silkworm cocoon. Su Fang thought for a moment, then urged the heaven-piercing blood king vine to frenziedly devour the various essences left in the corpses of the remaining cocoon race cultivators in the Dao Palace, and then seep them into his body. Next, Su Fang unleashed his divine might, condensing all the essences into a ball of energy, and struck it at the silkworm cocoon. Sizzle, the energy rapidly seeped into the silkworm cocoon, and was frantically devoured by the life inside. The life's devouring ability was astonishing. In less than 10 days, it had completely devoured the remaining millions of cocoon race cultivators in Su Fang's Dao Palace. However, the life inside the silkworm cocoon still showed no signs of breaking out. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Let's go all out. Su Fang gritted his teeth and took out pills. He used his divine might to refine the medicinal essence in the pills into energy, and then let the silkworm cocoon continue to devour. The silkworm cocoon continued to devour the pills, and there was still no sign of movement. Su Fang continued to extract the essence of the pills to feed the silkworm cocoon. The loss of pills was astonishing, and it made him feel as if a knife was stabbing his heart. Su Fang had used up all the pills on him, and even more than half of the supreme-grade pills that Patian had just given him. Just as he was about to give up, the silkworm cocoon finally moved. Puff, puff. Inside the silkworm cocoon, the life began to attack the silkworm cocoon, but it was clearly powerless. Let's go all out. Su Fang also threw caution to the wind. He took out a king-grade pill, turned it into essence, and swept it towards the silkworm cocoon. The essence of the king-grade pill was boundless, and after it was devoured by the life inside the silkworm cocoon, an extremely savage voice came from within, causing Su Fang's Dao heart to involuntarily tremble. Su Fang had already fused more than half a bottle of frostbone chalcedony with the 7 colors Vajra Dao heart. His Dao heart was extremely powerful, but it was still shaken by that voice, and his will almost wavered. It was clear how terrifying that life was. Su Fang was both surprised and delighted, and the anticipation in his heart grew even stronger. Puff! A gray beetle tore open the silkworm cocoon and crawled out. The beetle was only 1 foot long and looked no different from an ordinary beetle. However, its entire body exuded a savage aura that caused Su Fang's heart to palpitate. It gave Su Fang the feeling that he was facing a powerful beast born from chaos. Such an astonishing life form surpassed the sky-piercing blood king vine and even the weaver spider. Although Su Fang did not know what ability it had, he could conclude that this insect was definitely extraordinary, extremely extraordinary. Sensing the aura of the silkworm cocoon, Su Fang was so happy that he could not close his mouth. He had lost the weaver spider, but unexpectedly obtained such a strange insect. It could be considered as making up for it. Crack, crack. The beetle swallowed the broken silkworm cocoon in a few mouthfuls. It was hard to tell that such a small body could eat so much. After eating the silkworm cocoon, the gray beetle looked at Su Fang and let out a sharp whistle. Its figure flashed, and in an instant it appeared in front of Su Fang. Su Fang Dao was shocked. However, in the next moment, the gray beetle landed on his shoulder. It did not seem to have any intention of attacking him. Instead, it crawled up and down, appearing to be very affectionate with him. Moreover, the feeling that the consciousness of the primordial spirit revealed was as if Su Fang was its mother. I have another son. Su Fang smiled bitterly and helplessly. After the gray beetle crawled on Su Fang's body for a while, Su Fang sucked it into his Dao Palace. I don't know what this gray beetle is used for. Let's not worry about it for now. I'll slowly think about it when I have time in the future. The gray beetle was clearly still in its infancy, so Su Fang did not expect it to be of any use now. The chaos tide was about to erupt, so he had to make preparations in advance. Su Fang originally did not have much interest in the chaos tide, but this time, the gray beetle had almost eaten him to the bone, so he changed his mind. He was prepared to fish for some treasures in the chaos tide to exchange for resources. After all, he still had so many subordinates to feed. He continued to devour elixirs in Fuyao's cave abode. About 10,000 years had passed, and more than 100 years had passed in the outside world. Although Su Fang had not cultivated to the normal state of the lower Dao Void Realm, he was not far away. On this day, Buzz, the elder token in his body vibrated. When he took it out to take a look, a dignified voice came from it. All peak masters are to come to the punishment hall for a meeting. There are at most 100 years before the chaos tide erupts. The punishment hall has summoned all the peak masters for the chaos tide. I didn't expect the punishment hall to preside over the chaos tide. It will probably be a little troublesome. Su Fang furrowed his brows. He had already offended the elders of the punishment hall before. And Su Fang also learned from Ling Xiaozi that Chen Tianqing's biggest backer in the Western Mystery Mountain was the Western Mystery Mountain's first elder of punishment. In the Western Mystery, there were many disciples under the Western Mystery Daozu. As Daozu almost never showed himself, the disciples usually cultivated under the guidance of other experts, and each had their own backers. Chen Tianqing's backer was the first elder of punishment. This was also the reason why he could call the wind and summon the rain in the Western Mystery Mountain. But Su Fang did not care. He was the only one qualified to participate in the Chaos Tide treasure hunt in the Strange Silence Peak. He had Dao Profound Realm cultivators under his command, and they were also considered disciples of the Strange Silence Peak. But with their strength, participating in the Chaos Tide treasure hunt was tantamount to courting death. So to be able to get a spot, Su Fang was fine. He was not afraid of the punishment hall targeting him. Thinking about it, Su Fang put on the Hen Wuxiang mask and appeared with the appearance he had when participating in the Jiuxuan Heavens selection. He also deliberately suppressed his cultivation to the height of Upper Dao Profound Realm. Except for those powerful Dao saints, it was very difficult to see that he was already a Void Dao expert. He did not do this intentionally. The Chaos Tide was a grand event to hunt for treasures. If a Void Dao cultivator participated, he would definitely become the target of experts from all sides. Su Fang intentionally hid his cultivation with Hen Wuxiang because he did not want to be the focus of attention. When the time came, he would just make a fortune quietly. Chapter 3053. The Punishment Hall was located on the west side of the Western Mystery Mountain's main peak. When Su Fang entered that awe-inspiring and dignified main hall, many peak masters had already arrived. Seeing the cold mask on Su Fang's face, everyone was stunned. However, when Su Fang was chosen by the heavens in the Jiuxuan, he appeared with the appearance of Hen Wuxiang. Many of the Western Mystery Mountain's experts had seen him before and quickly recognized his identity. Other than an elder from the Heaven-Breaking Peak and Wine Saint Peak's Ling Xiaozi who greeted him, everyone else kept a respectful distance from him, feeling as if he carried a plague on him. Chen Tianqing was the master of the Heaven-Chasing Peak. At this moment, he was also in the punishment hall. When he saw Su Fang, he first breathed a sigh of relief, then snorted disdainfully. It turned out that Chen Tianqing had been worried that the one who attracted the astonishing Void Dao heavenly tribulation was Su Fang. Now that he saw that Su Fang was still at the Upper Dao Profound Realm, he naturally breathed a sigh of relief. Apart from the main peak, the Western Mystery Mountain had a total of 1,080 peaks and 1,080 experts. The one with the lowest cultivation was Chen Tianqing, a lower Tao profound realm cultivator who had advanced not long ago. The one with the highest cultivation was a Tao Saint expert. Of course, the Tao Saint expert did not appear this time. The ones who came were the elders of the training hall. The 1,080 experts stood according to the rankings of the peaks they were at. The strange silence peak was the last peak, so Su Fang was naturally arranged to be at the very end. He was an existence that could be completely ignored. After waiting in the main hall for 6 hours, a black-robed elder, escorted by a group of punishment hall elders, passed through the array formation and came out. The hall, which was originally noisy, quieted down in an instant. That elder's aura was illusory. If one did not see him with their eyes, they would not be able to sense his aura at all. It was as if his entire person did not exist. Su Fang looked at that elder and could not help but feel a sense of awe. He is the first elder of the Western Mystery Mountains Punishment Hall, and also one of the 3 first elders of the Western Mystery Mountain. His cultivation and status are even higher than the sovereign. The black-robed elder's cold gaze swept over everyone, then he said majestically, "The chaos tide is about to erupt." This time, the sovereign let the punishment hall preside over the heavenly tide treasure seizing matter and summoned all peak masters here to emphasize some of the rules of the heavenly tide treasure seizing, as well as the allocation of each peak. All the peak masters stood respectfully and listened attentively. "Of the hall's disciples will punish you severely if you violate this rule." The voice of the first elder of the punishment hall was filled with an unparalleled murderous intent. The hearts of the peak masters trembled as they felt a chill run down their spines. As for other cultivators, whether they come from Xixien or other divine realms, they are not included in this rule. Although the punishment hall's first elder did not say it clearly, his meaning was clear. As long as they were not from the Western Mystery Mountain, they could rob without any scruples and could even kill. This meant that there would be a storm of blood during the Chaos Tide treasure seizing this time. Of course, the Western Mystery Mountain cultivators could rob the treasures of others and kill cultivators of other factions, but the experts of other factions could also kill and rob. This was not a battle between geniuses, but a battle for treasures and fortunes. It was cruel, bloody, and completely abided by the laws of nature. Everyone should know that the present situation of the human race is not optimistic. Xixien also needs to plan for the future. This chaos tide is a chance. How many treasures we can seize will increase the strength of Xixien Mountain, and you will have a greater chance of survival. Therefore, the sovereign has decided that the resources of each peak will be distributed according to the number of treasures offered during the Chaos Tide treasure seizing this time. Great rewards will be given to the dojos that contribute the most. As for how the contribution will be calculated, when the punishment hall allocates the quotas to each peak, you will also be given a detailed method of accumulating points. Everyone, this Chaos Tide is an opportunity for all of you and also a great opportunity for our Western Mystery Mountain. Everyone must work hard and live up to the expectations of the Sovereign and me. The punishment hall's cold gaze swept slowly across everyone. Then he nodded to everyone and his figure instantly turned into nothingness, disappearing from the punishment hall without a trace. Next, the punishment hall cultivators began to distribute jade slip. Su Fang grabbed the jade slip and sent his consciousness into it. A large amount of information surged into his mind. There was a lot of information in the jade slip, including the rules of accumulating points during the Chaos Tide treasure seizing, as well as some things to pay attention to during the Chaos Tide treasure seizing, as well as some detailed information about the experts participating in the Chaos treasure seizing this time. The method of accumulating points was very simple. The treasures that erupted from the Chaos Tide were divided into 5 grades: low grade, mid grade, high grade, supreme grade, and king grade. Points were then accumulated according to the quality of the treasures. The more points the cultivators of each peak accumulated, the higher their results would naturally be, and the greater the rewards and resources they would receive in the future. What surprised Su Fang was that the information also mentioned a treasure that was not within the 5 grades, but beyond the king grade. The information especially emphasized that once they encountered a treasure beyond the king grade, they had to obtain it at all costs, even if they had to exchange their lives for it. The other Western Mystery Mountain cultivators also had to put down everything they were doing and assist in seizing the treasure seizing. There are treasures beyond the king grade? What kind of amazing supreme treasure is that? Su Fang was shocked, and at the same time, he felt a burning heat in his heart. In addition, there were some things to pay attention to during the Chaos Tide treasure seizing. This experience had been accumulated by the Western Mystery Mountain cultivators during the Chaos Tide eruptions time and time again. Countless experts had even exchanged their lives for this experience. It was extremely important for everyone to be able to save their lives at a critical moment. The information about the experts of the other factions and the God Realm was also extremely detailed. It could be seen how much importance the Western Mystery Mountain attached to this Chaos Tide treasure seizing and had done their homework in advance. After deciphering the information in the Jade Slip, the next step was to distribute the tokens. Every cultivator participating in the Chaos Tide treasure seizing was given a token. Not only was it a token to participate in the Chaos Tide, but it could also release a protective divine aura to protect the cultivators in the Chaos Tide and reduce the danger level. Every time the Chaos Tide erupted, the number of cultivators who entered the Chaos Tide to seize the treasures was limited to 100,000. If the number exceeded this number, it would trigger chaos and cause many deaths and injuries. As the Western Mystery Mountain was the host, they had 50,000 slots. The other half of the slots were taken by the other god realms and factions. 50,000 slots seemed like a lot, but in reality, each peak would not be able to get many slots after being distributed to the 1,080 peak. Therefore, the number of slots allocated was also a ranking of the strength of each peak. At the same time, it was also related to the future results and the distribution of resources. The dojos of Tao Saints had been given 1,000 slots, and almost 10,000 of them had been taken away. Then there were the more powerful peaks, with 100 slots at most and dozens at least. There were not many left. Chen Tianqing's heaven-chasing peak actually obtained 50 slots, making all of the peak masters' eyes red with envy. Although he had just advanced to the Tao Profound Realm not long ago, the powerhouses who submitted to his dojos were truly quite a number. Their overall strength was not weak. Plus, he had the Punishment Head Elder, this great backer. Obtaining so many slots all of a sudden, the other dojos could only stare helplessly. The remaining few weaker dojos, the slots allocated to them were pitifully few. But no one had anything to say. Who asked their strength to be lacking? Finally, it was Su Fang's turn. That Punishment Hall elder who distributed the tokens looked at Su Fang and smiled coldly, then ignored Su Fang and said loudly to the many peak masters, "Everyone has already obtained the tokens. Each of you go back and prepare." A cold light flashed in Su Fang's eyes, and he asked in a solemn voice, "Why doesn't my strange silence peak have a slot?" That elder revealed an appearance of coming to a realization, then said apologetically, "Strange Silence Peak has always been ownerless. When the Punishment Hall was distributing the tokens, they left out Strange Silence Peak. Truly very sorry." Then that elder put on an act, and called out to the many peak masters, "Which peak master will give up a slot for Strange Silence Peak?" The slots for the Chaos Heavenly Tide were so precious. Which dojo would be willing to give it up for free? Moreover, these peak masters were all not fools. They could tell with one glance that the Punishment Hall was deliberately making things difficult for Su Fang. Who would come out to offend the Punishment Hall at this time? Seeing no one speak, that elder said helplessly, "Apologies, the Punishment Hall is distributing all of the slots now, and the other dojos aren't willing to give up either. Strange Silence Peak can only give up this time." This seat guarantees that when the next Chaos Heavenly Tide comes, I'll definitely give Strange Silence Peak double the compensation. Next Chaos Heavenly Tide? When the next Chaos Heavenly Tide erupts, that would be an epoch later. Punishment Hall, don't go too far. Su Fong looked at that elder, his eyes as cold as ice. That elder sneered disdainfully. Su Fong, could it be that you want to rely on your identity as a disciple of the Daozu to be above the punishment hall? Many peak masters were looking at Su Fong. Some people felt that the punishment hall had gone too far this time. The dignified disciple of the Daozu, the number one genius of the human race, couldn't even get a token. It was really too much. There were also people who were gloating. Suddenly Chen Tianqing shouted loudly, Su Fong, this seat sees that you are pitiful, so I'll give you a token. Ling Xiaozi, who represented the Wine Saint Peak, shouted, Uncle Master Su Fong, Wine Saint Peak doesn't lack tokens. As your disciple, I'll give you one. The elder from the Heaven-Breaking Peak also took out 5 tokens, intending to give them to Su Fong. Unexpectedly, that elder from the Punishment Hall said firmly, all tokens are distributed by the Punishment Hall. With the consent of the Sovereign and the Punishment Hall Grand Elder, how can they be exchanged privately? Whoever dares to give the tokens to others without permission will be severely punished by the Punishment Hall. Punishment Hall is clearly not planning to let me participate in this Chaos Heavenly Tide treasure hunt. Su Fong shouted angrily. That elder said indifferently, this seat didn't say that. Chapter 3054. If he couldn't get a medallion from the Western Mystery Mountain, couldn't he ask for one from the other divine realms? Besides, Su Fong was a disciple of the Dongxian Daozu. How could he not get a medallion from the Eastern Mystery Divine Realm? No matter how powerful the Punishment Hall was, could it extend to the Eastern Mystery Divine Realm? Only now did the Peak Lords and Elders of the Punishment Hall realize that Su Fong was no ordinary cultivator, but the number one genius of the human race whose name shook the entire Jiuquan. The elder said darkly, Su Fong, are you thinking of betraying the Western Mystery Mountain? Su Fong retorted, the Punishment Hall won't give me a spot, so I'll go find one myself. Is this betraying the Western Mystery Mountain? What a great joke! I'm a disciple of the Daozu, but the Punishment Hall is bullying me like this. Is the Punishment Hall planning to betray the Daozu? The Punishment Hall elder was instantly speechless. The other Peak Lords also looked solemn. Su Fong's accusation was too great. Who could bear it? If the Punishment Hall still wants to stop me, I'll inform the entire Western Mystery of how the Punishment Hall is suppressing me, a disciple of the Daozu. Not only that, Master also left a Dharma body in the Western Mystery Mountain. When the time comes, I'll pay a visit to Master and ask him to stand up for me. During the Jiuquan Heaven selection, Master was willing to let the Jiuquan Heaven selection disperse on bad terms for me. I'm sure he'll stand up for me this time as well. The Western Mystery Mountain treated Su Fong this way, so I'll treat them the same way. I'll take a spot to participate in the Chaos Tide myself, so any treasures obtained during the Chaos Tide will naturally belong to me. I won't take a single one out. Su Fong's lofty voice echoed in the air as he strode out of the Punishment Hall with his head held high. The faces of the elders of the Disciplinary Hall turned ashen. This time, not only did they fail to suppress Su Fong, but they were also ruthlessly slapped in the face by Su Fong. They were put on the spot in front of everyone, so one could imagine how they felt. Su Fong left the main peak and released his sensing ability. He sensed the peak of the Western Mystery Mountain that was used to entertain other Divine Realm cultivators and then directly teleported there. In the air above the mountain peak, Su Fong concealed his aura and sat cross-legged in the air, staring at the interior of the mountain peak. On the mountain peak, there were many presences that Su Fong was familiar with. Most of the presences were unfamiliar but powerful. Those were the powerful experts from other factions of Xixien and other divine realms that were preparing to participate in the Chaos Tide. After waiting for a long time, when Su Fang saw more than 10 cultivators flying out from the mountain peak, he smiled embarrassedly. "It's you guys." Soon after, his figure disappeared from midair and reappeared in front of those cultivators, standing in midair with his hands behind his back. After a while, those cultivators flew over. That person looks familiar. Hen Wuxiang. No, he's Su Fang who destroyed Di Tiandaozi's physical body. This person killed Hu Yufei and destroyed Di Tiandaozi's physical body, causing Di Tiandaozi to be unable to recover. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely kill him to avenge Di Tiandaozi. It turned out that apart from 3 disciples of the Western Mystery Mountains dojo, the rest of these cultivators were Hu people from the Central Profound Divine Realm. The Central Profound Divine Realm's 5 great divine clans had dealings with the major factions of the other divine realms. Those who were able to participate in this chaos tide were at least Tao Profound experts. When they came to the Western Mystery Mountain, some cultivators of the Western Mystery Mountain took the opportunity to befriend them. These cultivators of the Hu people were originally invited by a peak master to be guests. They never thought that they would be targeted by Su Fang, this malefic star. The Hu people and Su Fang had a deep grudge. When they saw Su Fang this time, these Hu people cultivators naturally gnashed their teeth in anger. However, they only dared to talk about it. In reality, they were filled with reverence towards Su Fang. How would they dare to provoke him? They stayed far away from where they were. Su Fang's figure flashed and blocked the path of the cultivators of the Hu people. He said to the Hu people Tao Profound cultivator who spoke arrogantly just now, you said that you'll kill me one day? That Hu people cultivator was so scared that he trembled. He gritted his teeth and said, "Who are you? This seat doesn't know you. When did I say anything about you?" This person was so scared that he didn't dare to admit it. A disciple of the Western Mystery Mountain hurriedly cupped his fists and bowed to Su Fang. "Elder Su Fang, they are guests of the Western Mystery Mountain." "Guests of the Western Mystery Mountain? Have you ever seen a guest who wants to kill their host?" Su Fang shouted domineeringly, interrupting that disciple. Then, he waved his hand and grabbed. His arm turned into a blood vine. With a whoosh, it stretched out and firmly wrapped around that Hu people cultivator. Then, with a shake of his wrist, Su Fang grabbed the vine and sucked it into his body through his palm. He locked the space inside his body. "Let me tell you, the leader of the Hu people this time tried to kill me. If you want him to live, he'll have to pay a corresponding price," Su Fang said domineeringly. Then, he left in embarrassment. Those Western Mystery Mountain disciples and Hu people cultivators were all dumbfounded. Su Fang returned to Strange Silence Peak and searched that Hu people cultivator. Sure enough, he found a command token on his body. Su Fang didn't hesitate to take the command token, along with all the treasures and resources on this Hu people cultivator. He took them all for himself. In less than an hour, a punishment hall elder brought Hu Chong and a dozen Hu people cultivators to the air above Strange Silence Peak. That punishment hall elder shouted at Strange Silence Peak, "Su Fang, quickly come out!" Su Fang's aura pierced through the barrier and turned into a lifelike figure. He coldly looked at that punishment hall elder and said indifferently, "This lord is Daozu's direct disciple and the master of a peak. You, a mere elder, dare to shout at this lord. Do you know your crime?" That punishment hall elder was furious, but he knew he was in the wrong. He cupped his fists towards Su Fang and said, "Hu people have sent someone to the punishment hall. They said that Elder Su Fang captured a Hu people cultivator. Please come with this lord to the punishment hall to investigate." Su Fang said domineeringly, "There's no need to investigate. Hu people cultivator was captured by this lord." The punishment hall elder's expression darkened. He shouted, "How can Elder Su Fang capture someone for no reason? Quickly release him and apologize to the guests of the Hu people." Su Fang said indifferently, That Hu people cultivator publicly said that he wanted to kill me. That's why he was shackled by me. As a punishment hall elder, you haven't even investigated the matter clearly, yet you want this lord to release him and apologize. Are you an enforcer of the Western Mystery Mountain or a lackey of the Hu people? That punishment hall elder was momentarily speechless. In this way, Su Fang was still in the right. No one could say anything about him capturing that Hu people cultivator. Hu Chong suddenly said, Su Fang, what do you want? Su Fang said slowly, You Hu people cultivators arrogantly said that they wanted to kill this lord in the Western Mystery Mountain. This scared this lord witless and damaged this lord's Tao heart, making it difficult for this lord to cultivate peacefully. If you want to pacify this lord's Tao heart, you can only take out treasures. This lord will naturally release him. This lord isn't greedy. Just give me 10,000 supreme-grade medicinal pills. The number one genius of the Jiuxuan, an expert of the Tao profound realm, would also be scared witless? And 10,000 supreme-grade medicinal pills the moment he opened his mouth. Hu Chang's sword-like eyebrows rose in anger. Su Fang, don't go too far. You're unforgiving after gaining the upper hand. In the central profound divine territory, it has always been you Hu people who go too far. Now it's this lord's turn. Why can't this lord go too far just this once? Su Fang said domineeringly with an embarrassed smile. The other Hu people cultivators all flew into a rage, and one after another, they angrily rebuked him. Elder Su Fang only wants medicinal pills. Hu people can still take out a mere 10,000 supreme-grade medicinal pills. Hu Chong revealed the lofty and domineering aura of the Hu people's Tao profound realm Tao child. With a wave of his hand, a storage ring flew towards Su Fang. Su Fang caught the storage ring and looked inside. As expected, there were 10,000 supreme-grade medicinal pills inside. He immediately revealed a smile. Hu people are indeed magnanimous. Since Hu people are willing to apologize, then this lord will also forgive Hu people this time. Su Fang's thought swept the storage ring and flew back to the strange silence peak. In less than a moment, a divine aura swept that Hu people cultivator who was captured by Su Fang out of the boundary. Hu Chong waved his hand and brought him to his side. That Hu people cultivator who had his shackles removed immediately let out a furious roar. Su Fang snatched away all my treasures and resources. Even the token to participate in the treasure hunt in the primal chaos tide was snatched away by him. That punishment hall elder came to a sudden realization. The reason why Su Fang captured this Hu people cultivator was not for anything else but the token. Su Fang's actions are ruthless, decisive, and meticulous. It's best not to provoke such a character. The punishment hall elder's heart palpitated. He could not help but revere Su Fang in his heart. Useless trash. You can't even keep a token, but you still want to provoke Su Fang. You don't have to participate in the treasure hunt in the primal chaos tide this time. Hu Chong shouted angrily at that unlucky Hu people cultivator. The other Hu people cultivators looked at the strange silence peak. Their eyes were filled with anger, fear, and dread. Su Fang, this lord will wait for you during the treasure hunt in the primal chaos tide. Hu Chong shouted gloomily at the strange silence peak. Then, he led the Hu people cultivators away in embarrassment. You'd better pray that you don't meet me during the treasure hunt in the primal chaos tide. Otherwise, I'm afraid that the Hu people will be replaced by Tao profound and Tao void realm Taoists again. When Su Fang heard Hu Chang's threat in the strange silence peak, he sneered disdainfully. This time, not only did he get the token, he also extorted 10,000 supreme-grade medicinal pills from the Hu people. This was equivalent to solving Su Fang's urgent problem. There was still some time before the primal chaos tide. Next, Su Fang entered the Fuyao Immortal's cave and crazily swallowed medicinal pills. He strived to raise his cultivation to the normal state of Tao Void Realm when he participated in the primal chaos tide. 3,000 years passed in the Fuyao Immortal's cave. Su Fang suddenly opened his eyes. His face revealed an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. It turned out that the gray beetle that he kept in the Taoist palace had secretly swallowed his medicinal pills without restraint. By the time he discovered it, not only the Supreme Grade and Supreme Grade Peak medicinal pills that Een Patian had given him before, but also the 10,000 medicinal pills that he had just extorted from the Hu people had all been secretly eaten by it. Even the King Grade medicinal pills had been secretly eaten by the gray beetle, as many as 3. Su Fang now only had 4 left. Su Fang was fuming with anger and almost vomited blood. He transmitted his thoughts to the gray beetle and reprimanded it. The gray beetle actually began to act shamelessly. It curled up into a ball and pretended to be dead. Su Fang did not know whether to laugh or cry. After secretly eating so many medicinal pills, Su Fang found that the gray beetle's body had grown bigger. There were more black spots on its body, and its aura had become more ferocious and terrifying. Su Fang had no choice but to seal the gray beetle in a vortex space in the Taoist palace. More than 100 years passed by in a flash. There were still several months before the primal chaos tide broke out. The primal chaos tide is about to break out. All the practitioners who have a token, go to the tide watching pavilion together. Chapter 3055. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. As the head elder of the Western Mystery Mountain spoke, all the cultivators in the mountains flew into the air and rushed to the plaza at the top of the main peak. On the plaza at the top of the main peak, there were 10 temporary profound gates that led directly to the chaotic void where the chaos tide would erupt. The 100,000 experts from the Western Mystery Mountain and the other divine realms stepped into the profound gates in batches. A wave of spatial distortion suddenly swept over and disappeared without a trace. Su Fang followed the experts of the Western Mystery Mountain into the profound gate. Bang! In an instant, Su Fang was swept up by the twisting divine might. Soon, the shackles around him disappeared and a formation appeared before him. It was as if he had come from an illusion to reality. He took a closer look. It turned out that he had followed the crowd to the chaotic void outside the Western Mystery Divine Realm and arrived at a huge floating tower. This tower was built for the sake of obtaining treasures from the chaos tide. From the tower, one could see the eruption of the chaos tide from afar, which was why it was called the Tide Viewing Tower. There was an extremely powerful barrier around the tower. Clearly, it was to prevent the chaos tide from exploding. 100,000 miles away from the tower, there was 100 miles of turbulent chaos chi. That was where the chaos tide was about to erupt. As the chaos chi surged, a shocking amount of energy was brewing within. It seemed that the chaos tide was about to erupt. There were countless experts floating in the void around the area where the chaos tide was about to erupt. The job of these experts was to prevent people from sneaking into the chaos tide. Entering the chaos tide without a token was equivalent to seeking death. However, there were always people who would give up their lives for treasures and charge into the chaos tide recklessly, only to lose their lives in the end. Apart from preventing people from sneaking into the chaos tide, these experts also had another mission, which was to collect the treasures that were accidentally swept away by the chaos tide. They might accidentally fly out of the area where the chaos tide was surging. At the highest point of the tower, there was a pavilion where many experts were leaning against the railings and watching. There were a total of 5 Tao Saint powerhouses from the Western Mystery Mountain, including the head elder of the punishments. There were also other forces from the Western Mystic Divine Domain and other big shots from other divine domains. They were all experts at the Tao Saint level. There were close to 40 Tao Saints in total. The lineup was so strong that it was not weaker than Jiuxuan's Heavens Chosen. Su Fang sensed a familiar aura among the giants. Apart from Shi Xian's Tao Saints, Xianzheng, Tua Qianji, Hu Po, the Yi race Tao Saint, and the other Tao Saints who had appeared in Jiuxuan were all present. Right now, the human race is at war with the foreign races in the southern profound divine region, yet Xianzheng has appeared here and is even vainly trying to become the leader of the human race. This shows just how hypocritical he is. Su Fang looked at Xianzheng and sneered in his heart. In the huge square below the tower, there were 9 altars floating in the air. These altars were prepared for the experts from the Jiuxuan divine realm. However, one of the altars was completely empty. It belonged to the cultivators of the southern profound divine region. Since the southern profound divine region was fighting against the foreign invaders with all their might, no cultivators had come to search for treasures. Naturally, the altar was left empty. The quota that originally belonged to Nanxian was also divided among the various divine regions. Su Fang flew to the altar where the cultivators of the western profound divine region were and sat down cross-legged on the ground. Some of the western profound cultivators beside him moved away, leaving a large empty space around Su Fang, making him very conspicuous. It was obvious that Su Fang was excluded by the cultivators of the western profound divine region. However, Su Fang didn't care. He didn't expect to receive help from the western profound cultivators during the treasure hunt. He would rely on himself. Su Fang sensed that there were many powerful experts on the 8 altars. He couldn't help but be shocked. There were a total of 100,000 cultivators, and most of them were in the Tao Profound Realm. The number of Tao Void Realm experts was less than 10%. Apart from those who were participating in the war in the southern profound divine region, almost all of the strongest human beings below the Tao Saint Realm were gathered here. It had to be said that this chaos tide was a grand event for the human race. It could be said that it was a gathering of the winds and clouds. Su Fang even discovered that there were more than 10 powerful experts whose auras were comparable to Tao Saints. Of course, they weren't Tao Saints, but experts at the peak of the Tao Void Realm from the 9 divine regions. All of them were qualified to fight with Tao Saints. Su Fang saw familiar faces on the altars where the cultivators of the eastern profound divine region were. Dongxian Wuhan, Dongxian Qianyang, Dongxian Lai, and 3 other people that Su Fang didn't expect. They were Supreme Venerable Spring Autumn, Great Elder Changsun of the 3 highest profound sects, and Great Elder of the Luo Shao Sword sect. He didn't expect that they would also participate in this treasure hunt. It wasn't strange. The 3 of them were all in the upper Tao Void Realm. Although they were old, they were qualified to participate in this treasure hunt. Moreover, they were the top figures of the Eastern Profound Divine Region. These 3 peerless experts that Su Fang had to look up to in the past were now fighting for treasures and fortunes together. This gave Su Fang a strange feeling. Especially Supreme Venerable Spring Autumn and Great Elder Changsun. They had tried to steal Su Fang's spider back then. If they knew that Su Fang's current strength was on the same level as theirs, or even beyond theirs, one could only wonder how they would feel. Buzz, 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 Su Fang felt waves of murderous energy sweep past him. There were experts from the 5 great divine races of the central profound divine region, especially the Hu people, the Yi clan, the Qitian divine region, and the Hongtian divine region. Su Fang had offended too many forces in the Jiuxuan divine region. It was normal for him to attract so many hateful gazes. Suddenly buzz buzz buzz. On the altar where the northern profound divine region's cultivators were, Su Fang accidentally sensed the aura of a Tao Void Realm cultivator. It actually caused the Tao runes of the heavenly secret life, shrinking art to flash rapidly in his mind. The Tao runes quickly formed an illusory figure in his mind. It was the young master of the heavenly coffin. Then, Su Fang's heavenly secret life shrinking art sensed the spider of fate's aura. This proved that the Tao Void Realm expert disguised as a northern profound cultivator was the young master of the heavenly coffin. Moreover, Su Fang also sensed that the spider of fate's aura had become much stronger. It was obvious that the young master of the heavenly coffin had been feeding the spider of fate to make it stronger. Feeding the spider of fate was a very taboo. In the past, Su Fang didn't dare to let the spider of fate wantonly devour the fate of profound worlds and cultivators. However, the young master of the heavenly coffin was a vicious bandit. Naturally, he had no scruples. Su Fang's heavenly secret life-shrinking art shackled the spider of fate's body. The young master of the heavenly coffin couldn't sense it. After taking the spider of fate, he naturally couldn't wait to cultivate it. I didn't expect the young master of the heavenly coffin to come here and steal the treasure in the chaos tide. Since you're here, I won't let you go. This time, not only will I take back the spider of fate, but I will also take your life. Looking at the young master of the heavenly coffin, Su Fang's heart suddenly surged with fierce killing intent. The young master of the heavenly coffin also sensed Su Fang's killing intent. Su Fang was wearing the hateful faceless mask. Not only his appearance, but even his aura had changed. Naturally, the young master of the heavenly coffin did not recognize him. Who is that? Hateful faceless. He is also the first genius of the human race, Su Fang. The young master of the heavenly coffin was not surprised when he learned of Su Fang's identity from a North Xian expert beside him. This person escaped into the sky ravine and still came out alive. Extraordinary, this person is indeed extraordinary. I took his spider of fate, so he must think of a way to take it back. Moreover, this person is so extraordinary that he will be a great threat to me in the future. I must find a way to kill him in this chaos tide. The young master of the heavenly coffin thought for a while, and also wanted to kill Su Fang. In his opinion, killing Su Fang now was as easy as the last time. While Su Fang was sensing the young master of the heavenly coffin, Dongxian Wuhan's divine thought suddenly reached him. Su Fang, I heard that you were ostracized in the western Xian mountain. Even your token was snatched from the Hu people. Instead of being bullied in the western Xian mountain, why don't you return to the eastern Xian divine domain? Come with us to the treasure hunt this time. You are also a disciple of the Dongxian Daozu. If you come with us, the western Xian mountain will have nothing to say. It's fine. It's better for me to be alone. Su Fang politely declined Dongxian Wuhan's good intentions. Then, Chen Tianqing also transmitted his thoughts to Su Fang. Su Fang, it seems that you have offended many people. Many people want to kill you. Since you and I are both disciples of the Daozu, I will let bygones be bygones. When the treasure hunt begins, I will allow you to follow the cultivators of the heaven-chasing peak. When the time comes, I will give you some treasures. What do you think, junior martial brother Su Fang? After that, he sneered complacently. Su Fang smiled disdainfully. Ever since Chen Tianqing suffered another setback at the Tongxian Gate, he had completely turned into a petty person. Moreover, with Su Fang's current strength, it would be difficult for him to find a match in the Dao Void realm. Why would he take him seriously? Su Fang ignored Chen Tianqing's mockery and buzzed like a fly. The cultivators of the Hu people were also secretly discussing Su Fang. The treasure hunt in the chaos tide this time is, firstly, to do our best to snatch the treasures. Secondly, to try to kill Su Fang. Hu Chang's nascent spirit voice, which was filled with killing intent, spread through the minds of all the Hu people cultivators. A Hu people cultivator followed and said indifferently, "Don't be careless. Su Fang has advanced to the upper Dao profound realm in such a short time. He must have the strength to crush ordinary Dao Void Realm cultivators. Other than the Dao Void Realm cultivators, no one is allowed to attack him." This person was the Dao Void Realm Daoist of the Hu people. He was also the most powerful cultivator in the treasure hunt in the chaos tide this time. His name was Hu Lingi. Not only the Hu people, but some powerful cultivators of the Yi clan, Hong Tian Divine Realm, and Qi Tian Divine Realm were also eyeing Su Fang covetously. At the highest point of the tide observing pavilion, those Dao saints were waiting for the chaos tide to erupt while looking down at the cultivators. They were secretly predicting who would be the biggest winner in the chaos tide this time. The Western Mystery Mountain will naturally take the biggest share of the treasures in the Chaos Tide this time. However, the Supreme Xian Bao may not land in the Western Mystery Mountain. At the mention of the Supreme Xian Bao, even the eyes of these Dao saints became incomparably hardy. Chapter 3056. I wonder how many Supreme Xian Bao will appear in this Heaven Tide eruption? How many? In the recent Chaos Tides, the number of Supreme Xian Bao appearing has been decreasing. There was even one time where not even one appeared. I reckon that the treasures in the foreign race world on the other side of the Chaos Tide have already erupted. It's already not easy to have one Supreme Xian Bao appear this time. The powerful treasures in this Chaos Tide, Dao Profound Realm cultivators have no chance of getting their hands on them. In the end, they will definitely fall into the hands of those dozen or so peak Dao Void Realm experts. Just as the Dao Saint experts were secretly discussing, Xianzheng suddenly looked at Shi Xian Mountain's first Elder of Punishment and said with a smile, Su Fang, this child, showed off his ability in the Jiuxuan Heavens selection. This seed heard that when he was in Shi Xian, he shocked the world with a single brilliant feat in the Tongxian Gate test. This Chaos Tide treasure snatching, presumably, he will also shine brightly. First Elder of Punishment said faintly, Su Fang, his foundation is unstable, his Dao heart is impetuous. He still needs to be sharpened. In this Chaos Tide treasure snatching, he is still not qualified to compete for the top treasures. To be able to get a few high-level king-grade treasures is considered good luck. Xianzheng smiled embarrassedly and asked, Su Fang is a Shi Xian Mountain cultivator, Daozu's disciple. Why does First Elder of Punishment not think highly of him? First Elder of Punishment stroked his white beard and shook his head with a sigh. This child is indeed shockingly talented. Almost no one in the human race can compare to him. Moreover, he has great luck and great fortune. However, this Chaos Tide treasure snatching is not a competition of luck and fortune, but strength. Su Fang's upper Dao Profound Realm cultivation base is accumulated by elixirs and spiritual objects. How can he compete with those Dao Void Realm cultivators? In Shi Xian Mountain, almost all the cultivators thought that Su Fang's upper Dao Profound Realm cultivation base was accumulated by the resources given by Shi Xian Daozu. It was normal for the great Elder of Punishment to view Su Fang this way. Hu People's Dao Saint Hupa sneered disdainfully, among Dao Profound Realm cultivators, even Su Fang isn't considered top-notch, let alone that there are still numerous Void Dao powerhouses? If he is as overconfident and arrogant as Tian Xian in Jiuxuan, he might have died in the Chaos Tide. Hu Pu, are you saying that Hu people want to kill Su Fang in the Chaos Tide? Yin Patian suddenly sneered. Hu Po's deep eyes exuded coldness, but there was a smile on his face. I didn't say that. Su Fang has many enemies. Hu people aren't the only ones who want to kill him. Yin Patian chuckled. I'm just afraid that this time someone will be like Jiuxuan's Tianxian, not only failing to steal the chicken, but also coming home shorn. Hu Pa snorted coldly, the murderous intent in his heart growing fiercer. Tua Qianji suddenly spoke. I heard that Su Fang is being ostracized by some people in Xishuan Mountain. Even Dongshuan Supreme was alerted and asked about this matter personally. When the Chaos Tide is over, I will bring Su Fang to Dongxian Divine Domain. Humph, the top genius of the human race is being ostracized and discriminated against. It truly makes one's heart cold. Xishuan doesn't want such a genius, but Dongxian does. The Dao Saints of Xishuan Mountain didn't look too good. About half a year later, a rumble like muffled thunder came from the area where the airflow was surging. The Chaos Tide is about to erupt. Someone shouted, and all the cultivators on the spell altar stood up, including those Dao Saints. They all looked over. Boom, boom, boom. It was like a volcano eruption, but it was 10,000 times more terrifying than an ordinary one. The chaos void within 100,000 miles was shaking. Waves of turbid airflow, the thickest of which was 1,000 miles wide and the thinnest of which was only a few hundred feet wide, erupted from the void. The chaos airflow that was cold and deathly still surged in all directions. Amidst the erupting airflow, one could see a large amount of material fragments, mixed with the bones of other races, incomplete and strangely shaped treasures, and gemstones that emitted a strange xian guang. Treasures, so many treasures! They're all treasures from other races. Each one of them is worth a fortune. The cultivators on the spell altar exclaimed in surprise. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Thousands of cultivators flew out of the altar impatiently, flying toward the chaos void. Who would have thought that they would run into the boundary outside Tide Observing Pavilion? Boom! The eruption of air caused a wave of chaotic waves to sweep over, crashing into the barrier, causing the entire Tide Observing Pavilion to shake. The terrifying impact penetrated the boundary, and the aftermath hit hundreds of cultivators who were close to the boundary and wanted to rush out to grab the treasures. A dozen of them died immediately, and the rest were injured at the same time, crying out in pain. High up in the Tide Observing Pavilion, a Punishment Hall elder said indifferently, "This is only the first wave, and it's also the weakest. The treasures coming out are all ordinary treasures. Why are you in such a hurry? When the power of the eruption subsides, you'll naturally be released to search for treasures." The cultivators calmed down, but their eyes were still sharp as they looked at the treasures floating in the overflowing waves. After waiting for 6 hours, the Punishment Hall elder said in a low voice, "You can go out now." As soon as he said that, the boundary outside Tide Observing Pavilion suddenly disappeared. Many cultivators rushed into the chaos void with incomparable excitement and anticipation. However, there were still hundreds of cultivators left on the altar. Young Lord Heavenly Coffin, Exalted Empyrean Spring Autumn, Head Elder Chongsun, and the rest of the powerhouses were all among them. These cultivators were all powerful Tao Void powerhouses. Due to the treasures that appeared in the first wave erupting heavenly tide were all very ordinary, these powerhouses were confident in their strength and disdained to snatch those ordinary treasures. They waited for the second wave, as well as the most powerful third wave, before making their move. Su Fong mixed in with the many cultivators and entered the range of the chaos heavenly tide. The moment he stepped out of Tide Observing Pavilion, he instantly entered the shocking shackles and tremors. Such a terrifying place, Tao Lord cultivators entering the chaos heavenly tide would instantly be shaken to death by the chaotic frenzy tide. Tao Profound Realm cultivators were unable to withstand such shocking shackles and tremor impact force too. But fortunately they had tokens. The moment they entered the range of the heavenly tide, the token immediately released a protective divine might, blocking more than half of the surging shackles and impact. Even though the vast majority of cultivators were still shackled, the threat was not great. The heavenly tide was still erupting. Inside, there were also treasures appearing continuously. Some cultivators flew straight towards the place where the heavenly tide was erupting. A portion of the weaker ones searched the surroundings for treasures that had been ejected by the heavenly tide previously. For a time, within tens of thousands of li of the heavenly tide, all the cultivators were frantically searching for treasures. Su Fong activated his purple fate Dharma body and used his sensory ability to sense the aura of powerful treasures. In the end, Su Fong Dao was disappointed. The purple fate Dharma body did not react at all. Clearly, there were no truly powerful treasures in the first wave eruption. However, he was not so sure. The purple fate Dharma body could sense the aura of the Xian Bao, but it might not be so accurate towards foreign treasures. For example, the bronze oil lamp that Su Fong had snatched from Divine Lord Jin Xian was definitely an unfathomably powerful Xian Bao. However, the purple fate Dharma body did not react at all to it. No matter how small a mosquito is, it's still meat. Because of that gray beetle, Su Fong was now poor again. Even though he did not fancy ordinary treasures, he could only search for treasures like the other Tao Profound cultivators. Who asked him to be poor now? Su Fang flew through the undulating waves of chaos, using his great perfection Dharma body to constantly sense for treasures. His harvest was considerable. In half a day, Su Fang had collected more than 100 treasures. The highest grade was a foot-long finger bone with an astonishing aura. It was probably worth a peak supreme grade Xian Bao. The other treasures were mostly mid-grade and superior grade. Whoosh! Just as Su Fang was flying, a chaotic current swept over him like a giant wave. At the top of the wave, a black divine tree with golden divine inscriptions rose and fell with the wave. Although the divine tree was only 3 feet long, its aura was astonishing. It was actually at the level of a king-grade treasure. Even if it was not worth a king-grade Xian Bao, it was still worth more than a peak supreme-grade treasure. I have the purple fate Dharma body. My luck is pretty good, Su Fang said with a smile on his face. He was about to put the piece of divine wood away. Unexpectedly, right at this moment, a figure leaped out and instantly appeared nearby the divine tree, and then he waved his hand and sucked it into the Tao Palace. Ha ha! My luck is heaven-defying. I actually obtained such a shocking treasure. I'm rich. I'm rich. It was a middle-aged man from the Imperial Sky Divine region, and his cultivation was at the intermediate Tao Profound realm. After he obtained the black divine tree, he instantly roared with complacent laughter. You're getting happy too early. That treasure doesn't belong to you yet. Hand it over. Su Fang spoke in a cold and indifferent voice, and then his formidable will erupted with a bang and enveloped the middle-aged man from the Imperial Sky Divine region. Su Fang. The middle-aged man's laughter stopped abruptly. After that, he gritted his teeth and shouted, Su Fang, even though you were once the #1 genius of the human race, you were only the #1 expert in the Tao Lord realm. Could it be that you're still the #1 expert in the Tao Profound realm? If you want to seize my treasure, then use your strength to do so. The middle-aged man had obtained the treasure with great difficulty, so how could he be willing to hand it over? He immediately executed the will visualization technique and erupted with the energy of his will that suppressed everything to charge at Su Fang's shackles. Bang! 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 Under the impact of the middle-aged man's will, Su Fang's will remained firm and unmoving. With Su Fang's current cultivation and Tao heart, how formidable was his will! How could it be shaken by a Tao Profound realm cultivator? Hand over the treasure, otherwise I'll shatter your Tao heart. After that, Su Fang issued a command in his heart, and a strand of the will of slaughter overlapped once more, and it directly suppressed the middle-aged man's Tao heart to the point it was on the verge of shattering. Here! The expert from the Imperial Sky Divine region knew that he would die at Su Fang's hands if he didn't hand over the treasure, so he had no choice but to hand over the black divine tree scroll to Su Fang. Hand over all your storage rings as well. Su Fang shouted coldly in a domineering manner. The middle-aged man shouted furiously. Su Fang, are you looking for treasures or plundering? Can't I plunder at the same time? Su Fang laughed coldly. The expert from the Imperial Sky Divine region had no choice but to hand over all his storage rings to Su Fang. Chapter 3057. This profound Tao cultivator had collected a lot of treasures and was also quite wealthy. At the same time, Su Fang also found a good way. Robbing treasures was faster than searching for treasures, and it was much more exciting. In particular, robbing the cultivators of the Imperial Divine Realm and the 5 divine clans would definitely be more interesting and give him a greater sense of accomplishment. After making up his mind, Su Fang sneered and left quickly. He stopped searching for treasures and focused on the 5 divine clans, the Imperial Divine Realm, and other cultivators and forces who had a grudge with him in the past. With Su Fang's current strength, even if he suppressed his cultivation to the upper profound Tao realm, as long as he did not encounter powerful figures of the upper profound Tao realm, he could easily suppress them. In the next few days, Su Fang robbed a total of hundreds of cultivators from the 5 divine clans of the Middle Mystery, including the Hu people and the Yi clan, as well as some experts from the Imperial Divine Realm. Su Fang did not hold back and robbed them of all the treasures they had obtained from the Heaven Tide, as well as all their own assets. The harvest was truly astonishing. Those who could participate in the treasure hunt in the Chaos Tide were all powerful figures. The experts that Su Fang had plundered were all very wealthy. In addition, their gains from the Chaos Tide were also shocking. Every one of them was filthy rich. Su Fang's wanton plundering finally bade farewell to poverty, but he could not be called a nouveau riche. Su Fang gave the Grey Beetle the resources he had plundered and some of the useless treasures that had erupted from the Heaven Tide. The Grey Beetle was indeed a formidable glutton. It ate everything, even the fragments of the treasures, which made Su Fang shake his head. Just as Su Fangdao was wantonly plundering the treasures and resources of other cultivators, similar scenes played out in the entire area where the Chaos Tide had overflowed. Some of them fought for the treasures spewed out by the Sky Tide. Some of them were like Su Fang, plundering the treasures in a frenzy. It was not uncommon for them to even kill others to snatch the treasures. Compared to these vicious and merciless experts, Su Fang was considered to be benevolent. The Chaos Heavenly Tide's treasure hunt was just that cruel. It was completely different from the competition between the geniuses during the Jiuxuan's Heaven's Choice period. There were no rules when it came to treasure hunt. There was only the law of the jungle. For the sake of treasures and creation, all restraints were thrown to the back of their minds. They wantonly plundered and killed crazily. Boom! Boom! Chen Tianqing led more than 40 heaven-chasing peak experts to cast Shi Xian's supreme formation, surrounding Dongxian Wuhan, Dongxian Lai, and the other Eastern Profound Pavilion disciples. Chen Tianqing had made thorough preparations for the Chaos Heavenly Tide's treasure hunt. Although his personal strength was not strong, there were quite a number of experts on the heaven-chasing peak. Furthermore, they had mastered a powerful formation. With over 40 people casting it at the same time, the power of the formation grew endlessly, crushing the disciples of the Eastern Profound Heaven Pavilion again and again. In terms of strength, Dongxian Wuhan was far superior to Chen Tianqing. However, there were only a dozen Eastern Profound Pavilion disciples in total, and they were trapped in the formation. No matter how they struggled, they could not break out of the formation's shackles. Dongxian Wuhan, hand over all your treasures and your storage rings, and this seat will spare your life. Chen Tianqing shouted domineeringly toward the inside of the formation. He was very pleased with himself. Dongxian Wuhan shouted, Chen Tianqing, you despicable scoundrel! If you dare, fight this seat alone. Chen Tianqing said triumphantly, you, Dongxian Wuhan, are also a famous genius of the human race. Back then, you even snuck into the Yao race's world to gather information about the other races. Why would this seat waste my strength to fight such a powerful person? This is treasure hunt, not some competition between geniuses. If you want to blame someone, blame Su Fang, who asked your Eastern Profound Pavilion disciples to be so close to you. Dongxian Lai let out a thunderous roar, Western Profound Tianqing, you despicable scoundrel! Chen Tianqing said with a murderous aura, this seat is now Chen Tianqing, not some Western Profound Tianqing. If you don't hand over your treasures and storage rings, then don't blame this seat for being ruthless and suppressing all of you. Suddenly Su Fang leaped out with a wave of chaos. He sneered disdainfully, Chen Tianqing, who are you suppressing? His voice was still reverberating when a murderous intent surged out. It formed a bloody prison world in an instant and enveloped the dozen heaven-chasing peak expert. Then, a blood-red saber light surged like a river of blood and swallowed the heaven-chasing peak experts. Under the impact of the cold and sharp murderous intent, the heaven-chasing peak cultivators cried out in pain. Their Tao hearts were shaken and their wills crumbled instantly. The formation that trapped the Eastern Profound Pavilion disciples collapsed as well. Dongxian Wuhan and the rest charged out of the formation. Chen Tianqing was shocked and furious. Su Fang, the punishment hall has long had a rule that forbids you from attacking your own sect. How dare you ignore the punishment hall's rules? Su Fang sneered. You are really forgetful. I have already said that I will treat the Western Profound Mountain the same way they treat me, Su Fang. My current identity is not some odd solitary peak elder, but Su Fang himself. Su Fang, it seems like you really want to betray the Western Profound Mountain. When the time comes, the punishment hall will punish you. Let's go. Chen Tianqing was about to leave with the heaven-chasing peak cultivators. Su Fang suddenly sneered. Did I allow you to leave? Chen Tianqing was stunned. He then shouted angrily, What? Are you going to rob this seat as well? In the Heavenly Tide treasure hunt, everyone can be robbed. How can you, Chen Tianqing, be an exception? Your current identity and background are of no use here. Hand over the treasures you took and your storage ring, then scram. Since you don't care about being from the same sect, don't blame this seat for being ruthless. This seat is looking for a chance to defeat you and wash away the shame of being chosen by the Jiuxuan. Chen Tianqing's battle intent burned. He released his thoughts and turned them into the 10,000 heavenly wheel, which rolled towards Su Fang. I have already told you during the test at Tong Xian Gate that you are no longer qualified to be my opponent. Su Fang sneered disdainfully. A massacre heavenly wheel with monstrous killing intent collided with the 10,000 heavenly wheel. Boom, boom, boom. The collision caused a series of earth-shattering explosions, causing the chaos wave to become even more chaotic. Chen Tianqing's 10,000 heavenly wheel lasted for a dozen breaths of time before it finally shattered. Su Fang's massacre heavenly wheel, however, did not diminish in power. It pounced towards Chen Tianqing and was about to crush him. I didn't expect him to be so shockingly strong. Chen Tianqing was shocked, and his confidence collapsed again. Only now did he remember that when the chosen one of Jiuxuan was defeated by Su Fang, Shi Xian Daozu once told him that there was a kind of person who could never be surpassed. Compared to such a person, one could only suffer setbacks again and again. Chen Tianqing believed Shi Xian Daozu's words without a doubt, but he had never thought of Su Fang as someone who could not be surpassed. Only now did he realize that he was very, very wrong. However, what Chen Tianqing did not know was that Su Fang's current strength was the result of suppressing his cultivation base to the Tao Profound Realm. If he did not suppress his cultivation base, how could he be qualified to fight with Su Fang? Suddenly, a sword formation swept over and shattered Su Fang's massacre heavenly wheel. It turned out that a powerful elder of the Western Mystery Mountain, whose cultivation base had reached the middle stage of the Tao Void Realm, had intervened and resolved the crisis for Chen Tianqing. Interfering with my Su Fang's affairs is making an enemy of my Su Fang. Seeing that you are from the Western Mystery Mountain, hand over the treasure you stole, and I will let you go. Su Fang raised his eyebrows and shouted domineeringly at the elder of the Western Mystery Mountain. My treasure is right here. Why don't you come and take it yourself? The elder sneered disdainfully. As you wish. Su Fang's blood-fiend Dharma body flashed out of the Tao Palace and pounced on the elder. His physical body also activated the wasp wing Xian Bao and charged towards Chen Tianqing. Dong. The blood-fiend Dharma body activated Massacre's heart, and the sound of the heavenly Tao erupted, shaking the elder until he vomited blood. Su Fang, I will remember this. In his shock, the elder borrowed the remaining power of the impact of the heavenly Tao voice and took the opportunity to escape. The blood-evil Dharma body could not react in time and could only watch him escape. However, Chen Tianqing could not escape. Whoosh, whoosh. Blood vines wriggled out of Su Fang's body and bound Chen Tianqing tightly. Strands of blood seeped into Chen Tianqing's body and Holy Ji Palace. Then, they swept up some of his blood qi and storage rings and retreated into Su Fang's body. Chen Tianqing, you should understand now that you're just a clown in front of me. How dare you try to compete with the Su Fang? To be a disciple of the Daozu like you is a disgrace to our Su Fang. Get lost. Su Fang waved his sleeve and sent Chen Tianqing flying like a fly. Chen Tianqing opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His qi became weak and his will became depressed. This time, his Dao heart had suffered a heavy blow and would be difficult to recover. Su Fang, I will never be able to surpass you. Under the protection of the other heaven-chasing peak cultivators, Chen Tianqing quickly left with a heart full of unwillingness and frustration. Su Fang, thank you. Dong Xianwuhan and the other Heaven Pavilion cultivators came forward to thank Su Fang. Only then did Su Fang realize that there was an acquaintance among them. It was Heaven Pavilion's elder, Kueiziu. Kueiziu no longer had a trace of arrogance in front of Su Fang. He also did not have the domineering spirit of the youngest elder of East Profound Heaven Pavilion. Instead, he was full of shame. I'm also a disciple of the Dongxian Daozu. Why are you thanking me? I'm going to continue snatching treasures. Take care, everyone. Su Fang cupped his fists at Dong Xianwuhan and the others and continued to look for the next target. Su Fang has now grown to a height that we need to look up to. Dong Xianlai sighed helplessly. During the heaven-chosen Blood Valley Elite competition in Jiuquan, they were all experts who looked down on Su Fang. Now, the two sides had completely swapped positions. Everyone felt that it was a little surreal. As time passed, it was no longer so easy for Su Fang to snatch treasures. The treasures scattered around had mostly been divided up by the cultivators. Moreover, the cultivators from all sides had gathered together. Before a powerful treasure appeared, Su Fang did not want to reveal his true strength. It would be difficult for him to snatch any more treasures. There were no more treasures to be found. Chapter 3058. Su Fang also came to the place where the heavenly tide erupted, waiting for an opportunity to seize the treasure. Boom! Boom! Shockingly chaotic airflow spurted out continuously. Occasionally, a treasure would be swept out by the airflow. Before it landed, there would immediately be cultivators swarming up and fighting for it. Every cultivator's eyes were red, and some even lost their minds. They fought crazily, and there were people dying constantly. Boom! The largest airflow in the center exploded again with a loud bang, sweeping out an Xian Bao. That was a strangely shaped treasured saber. It was covered in rust, but it emitted an ancient and bloody aura that even the chaotic airflow could not conceal. It was definitely not an ordinary Xian Bao. That's a king-grade Xian Bao that surpasses the peak of supreme grade. Although it's a little damaged, it's definitely a king-grade Xian Bao. Moreover, it's an ancient treasure of a foreign race. It's even more valuable than an ordinary king-grade Xian Bao. I didn't expect such a powerful king-grade Xian Bao to appear in the first wave of the heavenly tide. Sensing the aura of that Xian Bao, countless cultivators' eyes turned red. Without waiting for the airflow to recede, they all flew towards the treasured saber. Some experts who were watching from the periphery and were originally disdainful of snatching the treasure were instantly energized. They charged towards the highest point of the heavenly tide without regard for anything. Boom! A figure charged out like a bolt of lightning, and he utilized a jade seal that erupted with supreme divine might that ruled over all living beings in the heavens and the earth, causing those cultivators that were charging towards the king-grade dark treasure to be shaken off balance. Even some Void Dao cultivators, including some Upper Void Dao cultivators, were unable to move under that terrifying dominating aura. This Xian Bao belongs to me, Hu Chong. Who dares to refuse? So it was Hu Chong who made the move. As expected of the number one person in the Dao profound realm of the Hu people. Activating the Xian Bao with a cultivation base at the peak of the Upper Dao profound realm, he actually made those Void Dao cultivators want to avoid the sharp edge. Of course, this was also related to Hu Chang's Imperial Jade Xian Bao. Hu Chang's Imperial Jade Xian Bao was slightly inferior to Hu Ditian's Imperial Jade Seal of Destiny. However, he was able to activate more than half of the Xian Bao's power, which was far beyond Hu Ditian's. In addition, many of the cultivators who were fighting for the treasures, especially those powerful Void Dao cultivators, were also quite afraid of Hu Chang's identity and did not dare to attack him with all their strength. Hu people don't lack king-grade Xian Bao, but it's not a bad idea to give this saber to the younger generation. Hu Chong revealed a domineering smile. Although he spoke disdainfully, his eyes were burning with pride. Then, he activated the Imperial Jade Xian Bao and released a divine aura that enveloped the Xian Bao. The saber flew out from within the jet of air and shot towards Hu Chong. Unexpectedly, right at this moment, a blood-red vine swept over and actually pierced through Hu Chang's Xian Bao's divine aura, and then it swept the Xian Bao and flew towards the side. It was Su Fang who'd seized Hu Chang's treasure. Su Fang, I was just about to look for you after you wantonly plundered the cultivators of my clan. I never expected that you would actually dare to seize my treasure. You're courting death. Hu Chong was instantly furious when he saw Su Fang had interfered and seized the treasure that was within his grasp. He activated the Imperial Jade Xian Bao and emanated the supreme divine aura of an overlord that stood supreme above everything, and he intended to crush Su Fang. The gaze Hu Chong shot at Su Fang was filled with disdain. As far as he was concerned, Su Fang was only a formidable genius that reigned supreme in the Daolord realm. Presently, even though Su Fang possessed a cultivation at the advanced stage of the Dao Profound realm, he definitely relied on external forces to improve his cultivation so swiftly in a mere period of time. So, his foundation was unstable, so his strength was naturally not worth mentioning. Not to mention seizing ordinary cultivators, he actually intended to seize a treasure from Hu Chong. He's truly courting death. Su Fangda really thinks that he's the #1 genius in the Jiuquan continent. At this moment, he's the #1 expert in the Jiuquan continent, and he dares to look down on everyone. The cultivators from the Yi clan and the other divine clans, and some experts from the Western Mystery Mountain and the other divine territories scoffed at Su Fang, and they were waiting for the scene of Su Fang being crushed. Roar! A mysterious violet energy rumbled out from Su Fang's body, followed by the roar of a dragon. The might of the Xian Bao instantly enveloped Hu Chang's Imperial Jade Seal Xian Bao. Buzz! 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 Hu Chang's Imperial Jade Seal Xian Bao actually began to tremble. It seemed to be extremely terrified, and the sovereign's aura it emanated vanished in an instant. After Su Fang's Violet Fate avatar fused with the Violet Fate Dragon, not only did it bring him supreme luck, its ability to devour cultivators' luck became even more shocking, and its ability to control magic treasures was more than 10 times greater than before. This was the difference between Su Fang and Long Tianxi. Long Tianxi possessed the Violet Fate Dragon, and his luck was astonishing. Good luck would descend upon him at any time. He could pick up treasures while walking on the streets, and good luck would descend upon him while sitting at home. On the other hand, Su Fang's Violet Fate avatar fused with the Violet Fate Dragon was not like Long Tianxi, whose luck would descend upon him at any time. Instead, it transformed into a kind of luck that helped him defy the heavens and rise to power. Furthermore, Su Fang's Violet Fate avatar was cultivated with the Violet Qi Dharma spirit as the foundation. It possessed the supreme ability to control the divine Xian Bao. This was something Long Tianxi did not possess. Hu Chong, other than relying on the powerful Xian Bao, what other abilities do you have? Without the Xian Bao you're nothing. How dare you be so arrogant in front of me, Su Fang? In the instant that Hu Chang's Imperial Jade Seal Xian Bao's power was suppressed, Su Fang sneered disdainfully. His figure flashed, and he appeared within 1,000 feet of Hu Chong. He punched out at Hu Chong. Boom! The sound of heavenly Dao like a heavenly drum rolled out, blasting Hu Chong and that imperial jade seal Xian Bao flying out together. Fortunately, Hu Chong possessed the extraordinary defense of the Xian Bao, defending against Su Fang's attack. However, he was still shaken by the sound of heavenly Tao until he vomited blood. His Tao heart and Tao palace were nearly shattered. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. There was no longer any contempt in their eyes when they looked at Su Fang. Only now did people understand that the current Su Fang was no longer the genius chosen by the heavens in Jiuquan, but a powerful expert who possessed the ability to crush Tao Profound cultivators. I originally thought that after advancing to Tao Profound realm, I still had the chance to have a vigorous battle with Su Fang. Now it seems that my thoughts were actually so laughable. Looking at the awe-inspiring Su Fang, the genius from the Li clan, Li Zhan smiled bitterly and helplessly. Not only Li Zhan, but many other Jiuquan geniuses who had the same thoughts as him were also filled with bitterness in their hearts. Let's go. This heavenly tide treasure hunt is over. Chen Tianqing's heart was filled with despair. He was completely disheartened as he left the area where the heavenly tide erupted. Join forces and kill him. Hu Chong was injured by Su Fang's punch. Aside from being shocked, intense humiliation and killing intent surged in his heart. He transmitted his thoughts to the experts of the Yi clan, Li clan, and the other 5 great divine clans of the central profound divine realm. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. More than 30 cultivators charged toward Su Fang almost at the same time. Not only were there Void Tao experts of the 5 great divine clans, but there were also powerful experts from the Qi Tian divine realm and Hong Tian divine realm. Suddenly the violent and chaotic air currents in the surroundings suddenly calmed down. The erupting heavenly tides also stopped at this moment. The second heavenly tide is about to erupt. Everyone used divine light instantaneous transformations, but due to the shackles, they were unable to teleport. Everyone could only use their movement techniques or activate their profound treasures to retreat to the back. The experts who were charging toward Su Fang no longer cared about killing Su Fang. They were so frightened that they retreated one after another. The terrifying power of the heaven tide when it erupted, let alone Dao Xian and Dao Su cultivators like them, even Dao Saint experts would have to retreat. Sensing the terrifying heavenly tide that was brewing, Su Fang was also frightened. He activated his Xian Bao and flew backward like a bolt of lightning. About half an hour later, everyone retreated to the tide-observing pavilion, and the outer boundary was reformed. Rumble! A loud rumbling sound like muffled thunder came from the chaotic void. Then, with another boom, a wave of chaotic aura erupted from it. The chaotic aura soared into the sky, forming a light pillar that was tens of thousands of feet tall. All kinds of images flashed in the light pillar. There were stars, mystic worlds, mountains, forests, lofty palaces, and also scenes of foreign experts who were obviously different from human cultivators. There were also images of refining pills and treasures. There were countless images. Some of them were fleeting, some existed for a long time, some were very clear, some were blurry, and some overlapped with each other, making it difficult to distinguish. What's that? Why would such a strange thing erupt from the chaotic heavenly tide? All the cultivators were shocked as they stared dumbfoundedly at the scene before them. That's a time mirage. The time mirage is a world of an alien race that has already perished. The traces of its existence in the past were too powerful, so they were branded in the long river of time. Now they are being spewed out by the chaos tide and transformed into scrolls. I didn't expect a time mirage to appear when the chaotic heavenly tide erupts. Next, a supreme Xian Bao will definitely appear. These time mirages are supreme treasures. Ordinary cultivators didn't know, but those Dao Saints did. At the same time, they also understood what the time mirage meant. They all stared at the images and focused on memorizing them in their mind. Su Fang figured out the origin of the images from the exclamations of those Dao Saints. Without hesitation, he used the heaven's eye to see through the images and memorize them. Although the time mirage was an illusion, it was no different from reality. It was just that it happened in the past. The information contained in each image was extremely precious. From it, one could obtain knowledge of cultivation, alchemy, and treasures that the human world didn't have. The cultivation civilization of the human race was gradually formed by learning from the cultivation methods of the foreign races. Therefore, the value of the time mirage that appeared now far exceeded the value of the treasures that erupted from the first chaotic heavenly tide. Even the Tao saints couldn't help but be tempted. If they could comprehend even a little bit from it, it would be of great help to their cultivation. Some cultivators were still in a daze. The head elder of the Western Mystery Mountain let out a thunderous roar. Hurry up and memorize those images. Those images that you memorize can be exchanged for treasures at the Western Mystery Mountain according to their value. If the value is high enough, you can ask for King-grade Xianbao, pills, or other conditions. The other Tao saints also sent voice transmissions to the cultivators of their respective factions. Whoosh. Chapter 3059. Some cultivators took out jade slips, trying to copy the time mirage from the chaos tide into the jade slips to store it. Who knew in less than 3 to 5 breaths, the sound of jade slips shattering could be heard. Hu Chong looked at those cultivators who were in a sorry state and sneered disdainfully. There are so many scenes in the time mirage, and they even contain extremely profound auras and profundities of the Grand Tao. How can ordinary jade slips contain them? Then he smiled proudly, and with a flip of his hand, he took out a mirror with a silver mirror. The mirror was vertical, facing the place where the time mirage appeared. Who people were worthy of being the #1 divine clan in Central Profound Divine Realm. Hu Chong, a Tao Profound Realm Tao disciple, actually had such a powerful Xianbao, and could copy the time mirage. All the cultivators on the 8 altars stared at the time mirage without blinking. Some cultivators like Hu Chong who had powerful Xianbao, and some who had extraordinary abilities, naturally had the advantage. The mirage that the heaven tide spewed out wasn't of much use to the Tao saint. However, they were able to comprehend some useful things from it, and it was also very useful to the younger disciples. Hence, the Tao saints at the highest point of the tide viewing pavilion were all fully focused. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Not long after, there was a slight buzzing sound around many cultivators, and a light circle enveloped these cultivators. It made these cultivators as bright as stars, and there was a powerful pressure that spread and shook within the light circle, forcing the nearby cultivators to retreat. This was because the memories of the time mirage from those cultivators caused the great Tao and heavenly Tao to form a strange resonance, which caused such a phenomenon to appear. Instantly, there were a total of 9 altars, and other than the one that belonged to Southern Profound Divine Realm, the other 8 altars lit up with dazzling light circles. Especially those powerful Tao Void Realm cultivators, their light circles were much bigger and brighter than others, and at the same time, it indicated that their talent, ability, and gains this time far surpassed other cultivators. Some powerful Tao Profound cultivators, because they had extraordinary Xianbao or abilities, the light circles around them were also very shocking, and their gains were also very shocking. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Su Fang used his heaven-prying eye, and at the same time, he used the Jiuxuan Limitless Sutra Heart Sutra to comprehend the scene in the time mirage. Who would have thought that some of the images contained the profound meaning of the great Tao that caused the Jiuxuan's Limitless Sutra to flicker continuously? Some of the scriptures were ones that Su Fang had already grasped in the past, while some were ones that Su Fang still only knew a little about, and some were extremely unfamiliar and difficult to understand. The scenes in the time mirage made Su Fang's understanding of the scriptures that he did not know much about or were unfamiliar with become clearer. At the same time, it also improved Su Fang's mastery of the Jiuxuan Limitless Sutra. Not only that, along with the flickering of the Jiuxuan Wuji Sutra, inside the blood-evil Dharma body, The heart of the alien race expert slayer was also beating along with it, vibrating out the wonderful rhythm of the heavenly way. This caused Su Fang's comprehension of the scriptures to become more realistic, and at the same time, caused the time mirage images to become clearer. It also dispelled the various kinds of pressure that came from comprehending the time mirage images. Su Fang felt that the Jiuxuan Limitless Sutra was like a boundless ocean that could contain all the great Tao's, and the profound meaning contained in the time mirage images were like rivers that converged into the ocean, causing the ocean to boil and become even deeper. Although the halo around Su Fang was not as big as the powerful Void Tao experts like the exalted Venerable Spring Autumn and the young master of the Celestial Coffin, it was very deep, vast, and much brighter. The pressure that it released was also more shocking, forcing the surrounding Western Mystery Mountain cultivators to move further away from him. Puff, 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 some of the Western Mystery Mountain cultivators around Su Fang, under the pressure of his aura, had their halos forcefully shattered. Those Western Mystery Mountain cultivators were both shocked and angry, but they were also shocked and fearful of Su Fang's performance. He's actually so domineering and lawless. A middle-aged Western Mystery Mountain cultivator felt Su Fang's pressure. Seeing this scene, his eyes flashed with anger. This person was an expert at the peak of the upper Void Tao realm, and his status was also very extraordinary. He was the Deputy Peak Lord of the Ningxue Peak. The Ningxue Peak was a training ground second only to the main peak in the Western Mystery Mountain, and its Peak Lord was also a Tao Saint expert. As the Deputy Peak Lord, this middle-aged cultivator's strength and status were evident. Although he was angry at Su Fang, he did not attack. The opportunity to comprehend the time mirage was rare, and he naturally would not waste his energy on other things. Time passed. The time mirage images were still erupting from the heaven tide, and at the same time, many treasures were shooting out. However, at this moment, everyone was completely focused on memorizing the time mirage images, and had already lost interest in those treasures. Comprehending the time mirage was also a severe test for a cultivator's cultivation realm. If one's realm was not high enough, not only would they not be able to see the profound meaning within, they would also suffer a backlash. Puff, puff, puff. Some Tao Profound Realm cultivators were the first to be unable to bear it. One after another, the light circles around people shattered. Some had blood seeping out of their eyes, and they vomited blood. Even their Tao palaces started to shatter. The injured cultivators hurriedly stopped comprehending, and started to close their eyes to rest. An hour later, there were already very few Tao Profound Realm cultivators who could continue comprehending. Only powerful Tao Profound cultivators like Hu Chong, who relied on the Xian Bao and grasped extraordinary abilities, could still barely comprehend those images. Boom! The aura of the Chaos Heaven Tide suddenly changed. The images produced by the light pillar decreased by more than 10 times. The scenes of cultivation, battle, pill refinement, and treasure refinement in the images, the great Tao profundities contained in them were clearly a level higher. What was displayed in the previous images were Tao Profound Realm and Tao Void Realm, and what was displayed now was Tao Saint Realm. Kacha. Hu Chang's mirror Xian Bao immediately shattered into pieces. He also spat out a mouthful of blood, and almost fell headfirst onto the ground. His aura instantly became dispirited and listless. The time mirage was actually a kind of heavenly Tao imprint. If one's cultivation was insufficient, even the powerful Xian Bao could not unleash much of an effect too. The other Tao Profound cultivators also all suffered the same backlash as Hu Chong. There were even some whose Tao palaces shattered, and they were seriously injured. Even some ordinary Tao Void cultivators had no choice but to stop comprehending the mirage. The profundities contained in the images were too high level, and already surpassed the limits that they could bear. The remaining powerhouses, the light circles around them also became even larger, releasing an incomparably majestic pressure, forcing those Tao profound cultivators and ordinary Tao void powerhouses to leave the altar one after another. Even though these cultivators did not have the qualifications to continue comprehending, practically every one of them gained a lot. Through those images that they remembered, returning to closed-door cultivation, their realms would definitely have a considerable improvement. On the 8 altars, of the 100,000 cultivators, only 200 to 300 people were left to continue comprehending the mirage. Those who could continue to stay on the altars were naturally some of the most elite Tao Void powerhouses. Among them, there were even some who had the powerful ability to battle with Tao Saint powerhouses. However, Su Feng was an exception. The cultivation base that he displayed now was only at the upper Tao Profound realm. Hu Lingyi, Hu People's #1 Tao Void realm expert, Hu Lingyi has the largest light circle around him. He will definitely be the one who perseveres to the end. Who is that person to actually release 6 blood coffins to comprehend the time mirage? Why does it look exactly the same as the legendary Heavenly Coffin Tao Saint's ability? Not only Hu people, the Tao children of the Yi clan, Li clan, and the other 5 divine clans are also extremely shocking. They will definitely be peerless Tao Saints in the future. Qi Tian Divine Regions Fengzhou, Hong Tian Divine Regions Duan Jiren, Dongshuan Supreme Venerable Spring and Autumn, and those elite Tao Void powerhouses of Haotian Divine Region, Yuxian Divine Region, Northern Xian Divine Region, all have the potential to become Tao Saints. Those powerful peak masters and elders of Shixian are also extraordinary. Looking at those peerless figures, the cultivators who were chased out of the altars were all shocked. Cries of surprise could be heard incessantly. As Su Feng is still on the altars. Impossible! How is this possible? Even some ordinary middle and upper Tao Void realm experts were forced out of the altars. What qualifications does he, a mere upper Tao Profound realm expert, have to stay on the altars? Those who stay on the altars now don't need any qualifications, but ability. Su Feng can stand side by side with the other elite Tao Void powerhouses. It's enough to show that he has this ability. Extraordinary, very extraordinary, the #1 genius of the human race. In just a few 100,000 years, he has actually grown to such an astonishing level. When the crowd saw Su Feng, the shock in their hearts became 10 times stronger. Some were doubtful, some were in disbelief, and even more were exclaiming in admiration. Dong Xianwuhan, Li Zhan, and the other peerless geniuses who once competed with Su Feng in the Jiuxuan Heavens selection had no choice but to helplessly admit that in these years after the Jiuxuan Heavens selection, Su Feng had once again defied the heavens and rose up. At this moment, Su Feng had already left them far behind. Su Feng's current height was difficult to catch up to, and even harder to surpass. Moreover, this distance would only grow bigger and bigger. In the end, it would be so big that they would need to look up. While the cultivators of Shixian Mountain were shocked by Su Feng's performance, the feelings in their hearts could be said to be extremely complicated. Almost 2 hours passed. Some of the cultivators who were pushed down from the altars rushed into the area where the heavenly tide was overflowing. They went to snatch the treasures that were spurted out by the heavenly tide. On the altars, some Tao Void realm experts also found it difficult to continue. Some had blood seeping out of their eyes. Some vomited blood and fainted. They had no choice but to give up on comprehending. In the end, there were only slightly more than 20 powerful Tao Void realm experts left on the 8 altars. The halo around Su Feng became brighter and brighter. The radiating area also became bigger and bigger. It radiated out to a distance of 10,000 feet and was still extending to the surroundings. At this moment, Ningxue Peak's Vice Peak Master, who was the closest to Su Feng, was disturbed by Su Feng. In addition, he had already reached his limit. It was already difficult for him to continue comprehending the time mirage. If I can't continue comprehending the time mirage, don't even think about it. A ruthless look flashed in Ningxue Peak's Vice Peak Master's eyes. He unleashed his divine aura. Along with the halo around him, he swept out and struck Su Fang's halo ruthlessly. Boom! The divine aura of Ningxue Peak's Vice Peak Master that struck Su Fang's halo felt like an egg hitting a rock. It shattered layer by layer. Not only did the halo around Su Fang remain unmoved, there was also a shocking rebounding force that sent Ningxue Peak's Vice Peak Master flying out of the altars. After stabilizing his body in a sorry state, Ningxue Peak's Vice Peak Master spat out a mouthful of blood. Not only was his aura dispirited, his Tao Palace was also shaken. Many cracks appeared. Without millions of years of closed-door cultivation, it would be very difficult for him to return to his previous peak state. Chapter 3060. The aura of the Heaven Tide was still flashing with time mirages, and the profoundness it contained became more and more profound. Crack. The 6 blood coffins beside young Master Tian coffin cracked at the same time, and couldn't bear it any more. He sighed helplessly, put away the blood coffins, and sat cross-legged on the altar to recover. Then, some Upper Tao Void Realm experts, and even some peak Upper Tao Void Realm experts, were injured and had to give up. However, their gains were extremely shocking. Even if they only caught a glimpse of the time mirage and comprehended bits and pieces from it, the benefits to their future cultivation of the great Tao would be extremely shocking. Therefore, although these Tao Void Realm experts felt that it was a pity, they were all very excited. This trip was not in vain, really not in vain. It's worth thousands of years of seclusion, ha ha ha. The great elder of Eastern Xian Divine Domain, Luo Shao Sword Sect, laughed. After witnessing the scene of the experts fighting in the time mirage, comprehending a trace of the essence of the Tao of Sword Tao from the Sword Qi, and having a chance to break through the bottleneck, he was naturally very excited. What a pity, if I could comprehend it for another incense stick's time, my harvest would be even more shocking. The great elder of 3 supreme profound sects, Changsuan's eyes were hale and hearty, but at the same time, they were filled with regret. High Venerable Spring Autumn was also forced to stop his comprehension, and he was also excited and regretful like Great Elder Changsun. I don't know who comprehended the long-browed foreign race expert's hand seal. I will exchange it with him at all costs. These monsters, they will definitely become saints in the future. The great elder of Luo Shao Sword Sect looked at the other altars and exclaimed. At this time, there were less than 10 people left on the altars, including Hu Lingyi, Feng Zhou, Duan Jiren, and other powerful Tao Void Realm experts. Then, he saw Su Fang's figure, and couldn't help but be shocked, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. High Venerable Spring Autumn and Great Elder Changsun looked at Su Fang, and instantly fell into great shock like the Great Elder of Luo Shao Sword Sect. They couldn't believe that Su Fang could persist until now. Do you think that it could be a Tao saint from Xixian who wore Su Fang's mask to participate in the Heaventide treasure hunt? Once a Tao saint enters the range of the Heaventide will be in chaos. Who else could the masked Xixian cultivator be other than Su Fang? High Holiness Spring Autumn and Great Elder Changsun shook their heads in denial. The Great Elder of the Luo Shao Sword School laughed. I didn't expect Su Fang to grow to such an astonishing height. You two tried to snatch his weaver spider back then. As far as I know, that brat is very vengeful. Let's see what you two will do next. He's Supreme Dongxuan's disciple after all. I don't think he'll do anything to me. At most, I'll just lower my head to him and compensate him with some benefit. Great Elder Changsun smiled helplessly. He was not a member of the Eastern Profound Heaven Pavilion. Moreover, the 3 Supreme Profound Sects and Su Fang did not have an ordinary grudge. He could not take out any powerful treasures to resolve it. Gu Tianqi. Thinking of Gu Tianqi, Great Elder Changsuan's eyes brightened. Gu Tianqi's relationship with Su Fang was not ordinary. He might be able to make use of this relationship. Great Elder Changsun breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Su Fang. He felt like he was in a dream. The little cultivator who could be easily slaughtered by him back then had grown to the point where he, a Dongxian powerhouse, was fearful and even in awe. Thinking back, it was hard to believe. Su Fang was actually at the end of his rope. He could hold on until now because he cultivated the Jiuxuan's Wuji scripture, mastered the enigma of Tianyan, and Slayer's heart. The time mirage that appeared now was too shocking. It had exceeded the limit of what he could endure. He was trembling all over. His pupils had turned crimson, blood seeping out of the corners of his eyes and the corners of his mouth. If I can hold on a little longer, my future cultivation path will be smoother and even higher. Su Fang was holding on bitterly. Bzzt, 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 bzzt. His Tao heart was trembling madly, the rainbow-colored light flickered continuously. Until now, he had been holding on with his strong will. It was also thanks to the seven-colored Vajra's Taoist heart that had merged with the glacial bone chalcedony that it had become incomparably sturdy, comparable to a powerful divine saint expert, even though it was still far from the height of the immortal Taoist heart. Otherwise, it would be difficult for his will to withstand the terrifying impact of the time mirage. Thump, thump, thump. Slayer's heart was beating nonstop, releasing the sound of heaven's will that helped Su Fang to relieve a lot of pressure. The Jiuxuan's Wuji scripture flashed in the Taoist palace as well, as if confirming the ultimate meaning of the time mirage, allowing Su Fang to remember it. Although it was difficult to comprehend it, it was imprinted in his mind. Boom, boom, boom. The chaotic aura that erupted from the heavenly tide suddenly became extremely shocking, surpassing that of a divine saint and reaching the height of a Daozu. There were only 3 images that were projected in the light pillar. One of the images showed the battle between 2 Daozu, while the other 2 were pill refinement and treasure refinement. Although the images did not have the earth-shattering battle scenes of ordinary cultivators, every gaze of the 2 Daozu powerhouses as they fought, and every hand seal during pill refinement and treasure refinement contained unimaginable Taoist rhythms and boundless profoundness. Those cultivators below the divine void realm only took one look, and they immediately felt their minds tremble, their Taoist hearts tremble, and they spat out blood. There were also some divine void realm cultivators whose cultivation level was too low. Their eyes immediately exploded and blood spurted out. Those powerful divine void realm cultivators on the altar also staggered, and the light circles around them shattered. They cried out in pain, and their comprehension was interrupted. The mirage at the height of a Daozu was not something that even half-step divine saints were qualified to look at, let alone comprehend. Whoosh, a figure broke through the air. This was a white-robed youth, who was not even 30 years old. He had an imposing appearance, and his white robe was as white as snow. He also exuded a divine aura. He was a half-step Daozu at the same height as Xianzheng. This person was the sovereign of the Western Mystery Mountain. Unexpectedly, he was also alarmed by the appearance of the mirage, and his original body directly appeared here. However, the sovereign's appearance did not attract the attention of others. All the divine void realm cultivators on the tide viewing pavilion were doing their best to comprehend the 3 mirage images, while the other cultivators were attracted by a figure on the altar belonging to the Western Mystery Divine Realm. There was only one person left on the 9 altars. The light circles around him were still there, and it was extremely eye-catching. It was impossible not to attract the attention of others. Su Fang. On the 9 altars, only Su Fang was still comprehending the 3 mirage images at the height of a Daozu. Although his body was trembling, and the light circles around him were flashing wildly, and it seemed that he would not be able to hold on for much longer. His eyes were also bleeding, but he was still looking at the 3 mirage images. This is impossible. How can a divine void realm cultivator withstand the pressure of the mirage images? Could it be that Su Fang's cultivation realm has already reached the height of a divine void realm? Hu Lingyi and the other peak Divine Void Realm cultivators all looked at Su Fang in shock. The countless cultivators below the altars were also shocked and surprised. Even the cultivators searching for treasures in the chaos tide were all dumbfounded. Su Fang was also at the end of his rope. The Tao and profound meaning contained in the three mirage images at the height of a Daozu had already surpassed his limit. Splat! After the light circles around Su Fang flickered rapidly, they started to shatter layer by layer. Blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth, and his aura also started to weaken rapidly. Suddenly, there was a buzzing sound in his mind, as if it came from the void vibrating from the heavenly Tao, pushing aside the layers of fog. Countless divine patterns and symbols flashed in Su Fang's Tao palace with a strange rhythm, dancing along with the sound of the heavenly Tao. The sixth level. After comprehending the countless mirage images, especially the profound meaning of the great Tao in the last three mirage images, Su Fang's cultivation of the Jiuxuan everlasting scripture broke through the shackles of the fifth level and stepped into the sixth level. The sixth level of the Jiuxuan everlasting scripture meant that Su Fang's current cultivation realm had already surpassed the limit of the divine void realm, and he was one step away from the height of a divine void realm cultivator. What he lacked now was the accumulation of energy in the Tao Palace, and a deeper understanding of the scripture of the sixth level. The light circles around Su Fang stopped shattering, and suddenly expanded several times, becoming close to 10,000 feet in size, almost covering the entire altars. The three powerful divine void realm cultivators from the western profound divine domain on the altars were directly shaken off the altars, and they were all indescribably shocked. Su Fang was completely unaware, and he stared at the three mirage images without blinking. He used the heavens derivation unraveling, and memorized them in his mind. This lasted for about half an hour. The light pillar of the heavenly chaos tide suddenly trembled, and the Xian Guang dimmed. Just when everyone thought that the second heavenly chaos tide was about to stop erupting, a blood-red light shot up into the sky from where the heavenly chaos tide had erupted. Within the blood-red light, there was a ball of blood the size of a walnut. However, it was just a little bit of blood, but it exuded a terrifying aura that was comparable to that of a Daozu, and there were faint mysterious marks flashing within the blood. This drop of blood came from a foreign race cultivator at the height of a Daozu, and it was not an ordinary Daozu. It's a pity that it's just a drop of blood from a foreign race Daozu, and it seems to contain the aura of the heavenly tribulation, and most of its essence has been lost. Even so, this drop of blood is still very useful to a divine void realm cultivator. It's probably a foreign race Daozu cultivator. When he was about to take that legendary step, he was killed by the heavenly tribulation, and only this drop of blood was left. If we can see the mirage of this foreign race cultivator when he was about to take that step, then that would be truly shocking. Even a supreme Daozu cultivator would go crazy for it. Even if there is a mirage, do you think we have the right to comprehend it? The divine void realm cultivators at the top of the tide viewing pavilion stopped their comprehension and exclaimed. At the same time, these divine void realm cultivators also secretly gave orders to the cultivators of their respective factions to obtain that drop of blood at all costs. Thus, apart from those cultivators who were injured while comprehending the heavenly chaos tide, nearly 100,000 cultivators madly charged toward where the heavenly chaos tide had erupted. Suddenly, from where the heavenly chaos tide had erupted, a string of indistinct voices could be heard. It seemed to be some sort of incantation, but it also sounded like someone was talking nonsense. It was not that they could not hear it clearly, but with the cultivations of many cultivators, including those half-step Daozu cultivators like Xianzheng and the Western Black Mountain Sovereign, they did not have the right to hear it. Chapter 3061. That's the last words of the Daozu expert after he failed to break through. It's not some last words. It's the enlightenment he gained when he tried to break through to the peak of the Daozu. Creation. This is the true creation of the second wave of the heavenly tide. That incantation-like voice was just some meaningless noise in the ears of the other cultivators. When these words landed in the ears of the many Tao saints, they were all shocked. They all gasped in shock and gasped in shock. However, even with the strength of these Tao saints, they were unable to discern anything useful from that voice. Even peerless existences like Xianjing, the Western Black Mountain Sovereign, and the Punishment Elder, who were close to the level of the Daozu, could only obtain some ambiguous information from that voice. A few Tao saints tried to memorize the voice with their primordial spirits, but their Tao palaces and primordial spirits were shaken and almost collapsed. They spat out blood on the spot. The profound meaning contained in that voice pointed to the true meaning of the great Tao. If one's cultivation level was not high enough, it would be difficult to memorize it. Su Fang looked toward the source of the voice, his eyes shining brightly. Buzz, buzz, buzz. That mysterious voice contained boundless true meaning of the great Tao, causing the Jiuxuan Limitless Sutra to vibrate in the Tao Palace. Many unfamiliar scriptures that contained boundless profoundness flickered along with the voice. Compared to the Jiuxuan Limitless Sutra that he had obtained, it was a scripture bestowed by the heavens. The last words of the expert of the foreign race were the true meaning of the great Tao, causing the scriptures that Su Fang had never cultivated before to resonate. Moreover, the level of these scriptures far exceeded his current cultivation level. The highest level that Su Fang had grasped was the 6th level, and he had yet to completely master it. And the scriptures that flashed were from the 8th level. Su Fang did not even have the right to comprehend and cultivate a scripture that was 2 levels higher than his, let alone master it. As the scripture flickered, it also caused the surrounding heavenly Tao laws to vibrate. The halo around Su Fang suddenly lit up, like a blazing sun rising in the darkness. In an instant it was dazzling and dazzling. Such a shocking scene attracted the attention of numerous people, including those Tao saints. They were all shocked and looked at Su Fang in disbelief. These scriptures contain a supreme truth that surpasses Daozu. Although I am unable to comprehend them now, Master can. Perhaps there will be a day when I will be able to use them as well. I must obtain such a good fortune. How could Su Fang miss out on such an amazing opportunity? Suppressing the excitement in his heart, he tried to memorize the scriptures. Who knew Su Fang was shocked to find that his consciousness could only watch as the scriptures flickered, but he could not remember them. As soon as those scriptures entered his memory, they quickly disappeared. It was as if there was a mysterious power that was erasing his memories. That is the power of the heavenly Tao. Because my cultivation is not high enough, I am unable to remember these scriptures. These scriptures belong to me. Why am I not even qualified to remember them? Su Fang's eyes flashed with determination. His heavenly mandate Dharma body appeared in the Tao Palace. He clasped his hands together and chanted the scriptures from the heavenly secret life shrinking technique. He was actually going to use the heavenly secret life shrinking technique to forcibly imprint the scriptures of the Jiuxuan Wuji Sutra into his destiny. He was going to use his lifespan as the price to activate the heavenly secret life shrinking technique and obtain that supreme good fortune. Chi, chi, chi. When the scriptures came into contact with the power of the void, they immediately burned. Su Fang's lifespan was also burning rapidly. His life force was withering at an alarming rate. The entire process only lasted for 3 breaths of time. Su Fang lost nearly 1/5 of his lifespan. His black hair turned white, and his face became that of a man in his 30s. Fortunately, the scriptures of the Jiuxuan Wuji Sutra belonged to him. It was just that he had yet to comprehend them. Right now, he was memorizing the scriptures that belonged to him, and not directly memorizing the last words of the foreign race elite. Therefore, the power of the void was not very strong. Otherwise, a mere void Tao cultivator like him would have been killed instantly. A mere profound Tao cultivator, you overestimate yourself. I thought that Su Fang could really defy the heavens and even hear that world-shaking voice. This is the price of arrogance. Su Fang is in danger. Some people were worried for Su Fang. And those cultivators who were originally filled with jealousy of Su Fang were all gloating when they saw that Su Fang had suffered a backlash and lost a large amount of his lifespan. Seeing that the foreign race elite's voice was about to end, although many Tao saints felt that it was a pity, they could only watch helplessly. Whoosh! A figure stepped out of the void. It was Shi Xian Daozu. This time, it was Shi Xian Daozu's formless avatar that appeared. This avatar was formless and formless, mysterious and formless, but it could transform into anything. Now that it appeared here, no one could sense its existence. Back then, it was this avatar that had been injured in the battle with the 10 Directions Divine Masters. It had been staying in Shixian Mountain to recuperate. At the same time, it was also guarding. Unless Shixian Mountain was attacked by a powerful enemy, this avatar would not easily appear. It suddenly appeared now because of the last words of the foreign race elite that erupted from the heavenly tide. It actually ended. Looking at the place where the heavenly tide erupted, Shi Xian Daozu revealed a regretful expression. He was still one step too late. He could only hear some lingering sounds. Moreover, with his strength, he was unable to reverse the flow of time and listen to that world-shaking voice again. That voice was the true meaning of the great Tao that the foreign race Daozu spoke with the voice of the great Tao after he failed to reach the legendary peak. He prepared to leave it for his descendants. This time, it erupted with the heavenly tide. A pity, truly a pity. If I could hear the last words of the foreign race Daozu, this ancestor might have been able to gain something from it. Even if I could not take that step, at least there would be a glimmer of hope. What a pity! I was just an instant away. It seems that this ancestor's providence is not enough. Perhaps I will never be able to take that step. Shi Xian Daozu's heart was filled with regret. The strongest expert of the human race was Daozu. No one had ever been able to surpass Daozu and reach that legendary height. It was precisely because of this that the human race was constantly being attacked by the foreign race. How difficult would it be to take that step? Moreover, there were no predecessors to learn from. How could Shi Xian Daozu not feel regret when he finally had a heaven-sent opportunity and missed it like this? But he was a peak expert of the human race. He knew that he could not force an opportunity that did not belong to him. He quickly recovered his composure. Just as he was about to leave, the halo around Su Fang shattered with a puff sound. His body swayed, and a mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth. Then, he fell to the ground. Shi Xian Daozu raised an eyebrow. He waved his sleeve and sent out a wave of peaceful presence that entered Su Fang's Tao Palace. Master! Su Fang's spirit was lifted, and he sat up from the altar. Shi Xian Daozu's reproachful voice sounded in Su Fang's mind. You were too rash. The voice of the great Tao from a foreign race expert at Daozu's level is not something a lower-level void realm cultivator like you can meddle with. You are lucky that you did not lose your life. Su Fang responded embarrassedly. This disciple was rash. I will not dare next time. There will be a next time? This kind of time mirage will not appear at any time, especially a foreign race expert at Daozu's level. Even I rarely encounter one. You think there will be a next time? Shi Xian Daozu's tone was harsh, and Su Fang realized the danger just now. That voice just now was useful to master? Of course, but with your present cultivation, it is too early to say this. Never mind, I heard some lingering sound just now. I will go back and study it in seclusion. Maybe I will have some gains. It is better than nothing. Master, is there something else? This disciple has some scriptures from the Jiuxuan's Infinite Sutra. Maybe they will be useful to master. I have no use for the scriptures that you cultivate, said Yi Futian. Those scriptures are from the 8th level of the Jiuxuan's Infinite Sutra. They appeared because of the last words of that foreign race expert. What? Shi Xian Daozu made a sound of disbelief. His figure appeared in front of Su Fang in a flash. But only Su Fang could see him. Is what you say true? Impossible. You cultivate the Jiuxuan's infinite sutra and have a realm that surpasses other cultivators. Even if that voice can make the scriptures appear, how can you remember those scriptures? Shi Xian Daozu lost his composure. His eyes flashed, but he did not dare to be sure. Master, this disciple used the life-shrinking art to forcibly memorize those unfamiliar scriptures into my destiny. No wonder you lost so much life in an instant, you brat. You are crazy. You don't want to live anymore. Dao ancestor Shi Xian knew that although Su Fang's words sounded easy, they were actually extremely dangerous. After all, the profundities contained in those scriptures far exceeded his realm. The slightest carelessness would result in his death. Let Master see those scriptures. A consciousness entered Su Fang's Jiuxuan Dao Palace. A long time later, Shi Xian Daozu sighed in shock. I had not thought, Master would have never thought that I would obtain such an astounding creation from you. Su Fang was both shocked and overjoyed. Master, these scriptures are really useful to you? Not just useful. They are very useful. Shi Xian Daozu's tone was filled with excitement as he slowly said to Su Fang. So the world-shaking sound that had appeared at the end was the comprehension that the foreign expert had received when he was trying to reach Daozu's limit. While he had failed, it was still precious. Su Fang had memorized it through the Jiuxuan's infinite sutra. Shi Xian Daozu had obtained these scriptures. It was like hearing the voice directly. The use to Shi Xian was hard to imagine. Even through these scriptures, there was hope of taking that legendary step. While it was just a thread of hope, it was something that human cultivators had never had before. How could Shi Xian Daozu be happy? Su Fang was naturally overjoyed to be able to help Shi Xian Daozu's cultivation. He was smiling so widely he could not close his mouth. Chapter 3062. Shi Xian Daozu sighed emotionally and was gratified. When I took you in as my disciple, I did not think that I would receive such a shocking fortune from you. First, it was the ice heart flower, and now it is the last words of the strong cultivator Daozu. Su Fang said embarrassedly, Master, you once promised that you would give me a reward every time I advance to a new realm. I will not forget about you. You have already received the reward I gave you for advancing to the Dao Void realm. Su Fang was shocked and shocked. You have already received it? You have to raise the heaven-devouring insect well. It will be of great use to your strength. There will definitely be extraordinary treasures in the next third tide. Go and fight for it. The eruption of the chaos tide this time is different from the past. Even the world-shaking sound of the strong cultivator Daozu charging to the peak has appeared. This is the fortune of the human race. At the same time, it also means that a great disaster will descend upon the human race. Although your current strength has already entered the ranks of the strong, it is far from enough. The enemies you will face in the end are the strong cultivators of the other races. When I return to Shi Xian Mountain, I will summon my true body and Dharma body to enter seclusion. I will fight for a glimmer of hope for myself and for the human race. You are on your own. You must not reveal the slightest bit of information about the scripture. Otherwise, it will bring you a great disaster. Remember this. Shi Xian Daozu said in a serious tone. Then he looked at Su Fang with gratified eyes. When he nodded, his figure turned invisible and disappeared without a trace. Heaven-devouring insect? What the hell was that? Su Fang couldn't help but be shocked. Then he thought of the gray beetle that was born from the cocoon. Su Fang suddenly understood. So Master already knew about the cocoon but kept it there. It was actually a reward for me to advance to the Dao Void realm. Master really put a lot of thought into me. While Su Fang was shocked, he was also very grateful. He also understood why the sovereign appointed him as the master of the strange Silence Peak. It was not to suppress him, but to give him a fortune. Su Fang also understood that the sovereign did not treat him like this because he had struck Ling Qingyu and wanted revenge, but because Shi Xian Daozu had incited him to use this to temper Su Fang. Shi Xian Daozu's good intentions caused waves of warmth to flow through Su Fang's heart. After understanding all of this, Su Fang's resentment towards the Western Profound Mountains sovereign vanished without a trace. If even Master values it so much, then the gray beetle must be something extraordinary. It's just that thing can eat too much. Thinking of the gray beetle, Su Fang was filled with anticipation. However, Su Fang felt as if a knife was piercing his heart when he thought about how he had almost gone bankrupt after being eaten by the gray beetles. If it could eat so much when it was just born, how much would it cost to raise it to adulthood? The Su Fang already had the heaven-piercing Blood King Rattan as a glutton. Now there was another powerful life form that could eat 10 times or even 100 times more than the heaven-piercing Blood King Rattan. My traveling spider is still with young Master Celestial Coffin. Young Master Celestial Coffin? Su Fang looked at young Master Celestial Coffin, who was currently fighting for the treasure in the Chaos Tide, and a fierce murderous intent surged in his heart. At this moment, in the Chaos Tide, many cultivators were engaged in a frenzied battle for that drop of Daozu's blood. That drop of Daozu's blood was something that even Dao saints coveted, let alone those Dao Profound and Void Dao cultivators. However, only those peak upper Dao Void cultivators were qualified to fight for that drop of blood. The others did not have the right to interfere at all, let alone Dao Profound cultivators. The battle for Daozu's blood was extremely tragic. Every cultivator used their most powerful techniques, using peerless Abhijna, Xian Bao, and rune talismans. From time to time, Void Dao cultivators would retreat with heavy injuries, and there were even upper Dao Void cultivators who died. Even their Dharma bodies and origin souls could not escape. The strength displayed by those experts at the top of the Void Dao realm shocked Su Fang. Hu Lingyi of the Hu people, Yi Wuji of the Yi clan, and the Dao Void realm Daoists of the other 5 divine clans. The strength and ability displayed by the peak experts of the other divine regions were even qualified to fight against Dao saints. Seeing such a scene, Su Fang also completely dispelled the idea of fighting for Daozu's blood. He had lost a lot of lifespan. Although it was not fatal, it made him feel dispirited. It was obviously not a wise choice to fight for Daozu's blood now. If I can get that drop of blood, not only will I be able to recover my lifespan quickly, but my physical body and heaven-piercing Blood King Vine will also undergo another transformation. Forget it, one should not be too greedy. I have gained enough this time. Although Su Fang felt that it was a pity in his heart, he still dispelled the greed in his heart. Although that drop of Daozu's blood was precious, it was insignificant compared to what he gained from the second wave of the heavenly tide. Not only did he gain a higher level of Jiuxuan's Wuji scripture, but he also gained a large amount of time mirages, including the memories of 3 Daozu experts. The most valuable thing was undoubtedly the enlightenment that the foreign race Daozu gave after he failed to reach the peak. This was something that could not be exchanged with any treasure. After gaining so much, he still wanted to covet more treasures. It would be like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Moreover, there was still the third wave of the heavenly tide. Perhaps there would be even more powerful treasures. He had to recover quickly. Su Fang entered the interior of Fu Yao's cavern and sat cross-legged in the time formation. He left a thought to pay attention to the movements outside. With a flip of his right hand, a finger bone appeared in his palm. This finger bone was obtained during the first wave of the heavenly tide. It probably came from a Dao saint expert of a foreign race. There was still some life essence left in it. Su Fang did not have many treasures that could be used to recover life. He could only make do with this finger bone. Just as Su Fang recovered, the battle for the drop of Daozu's blood also came to an end. Unexpectedly, that drop of blood did not land in the hands of the Hu people's Daozi, Hu Lingi. Instead, it was obtained by the Yi clan's Dao Void Realm Daozi Yi Wuji. In the end, Yi Wuji returned to the Tide Viewing Pavilion with the drop of blood. The other Dao Void Realm experts could only give up and return angrily. Congratulations to the Yi clan for obtaining such a valuable treasure. At the top of the Tide Viewing Pavilion, many Dao saints congratulated the Yi clan's Dao saints. They were all envious and jealous. The Yi clan's Dao saints were very proud and praised Yi Wuji. Yi Wuji was able to obtain Daozu's blood from so many experts. He had paid a huge price and was heavily injured. It was obvious that he would not be able to continue fighting for the treasure during the third wave of the heavenly tide. However, he was very excited. With this drop of Daozu's blood, his chances of becoming a Dao saint had increased by 30%. How could he not be happy with such a shocking reward? The second wave of the heavenly tide was coming to an end. However, there were still some scattered treasures that erupted from the heavenly tide. Many cultivators remained in the region of the heavenly tide to search for treasures. In the past, there would be a gap of 3 months to half a year between the second and third wave of the heavenly tide. Many Dao saints and those Dao Void Realm experts who had returned to the spiritual altar gathered together and made use of this time to trade. The items that they traded were the memories that were shown in the time mirage just now. Because there were too many images in the time mirage, it was impossible to remember all of them. Some people were not strong enough and could not remember the images that were useful to them. Thus, they took out treasures and traded with other cultivators. The trades were indeed shocking. Some experts did not hesitate to take out treasures in order to obtain a mirage image that was useful to them. There were even king-grade Xianbao, as well as some extremely rare spiritual items and gems. This was normal. Treasures were dead. However, some of the images in the time mirage were not only beneficial to their own cultivation, but also to their entire faction. These experts were willing to sacrifice their treasures to take out those images that were useful to them. Unfortunately, everyone's memories of the time mirage were very limited. This meant that even if some people had treasures, they would not be able to get what they wanted. The first elder of the Luo Shao sword sect belonged to this category. I am willing to take out my Luo Shao divine sword in exchange for the sword will mirage images of the saint-level foreign race experts. That mirage image was extremely important to the first elder of the Luo Shao sword sect and the entire Luo Shao sword sect. He was going all out and took out his most powerful treasure. There are not many people who cultivate the sword Dao here, who would have the time to remember the mirage image about the sword Dao. I do remember bits and pieces. However, the Luo Shao divine sword is your natal Xianbao. What's the use of it for me? Perhaps there are Dao saint experts who have remembered the mirage image. Unfortunately, you can't take out treasures that can tempt them. The other Void Dao experts shook their heads, which greatly disappointed the first elder of the Luo Shao sword sect. Suddenly, a figure condensed from Su Fang's thought flew over and said to the first elder of the Luo Shao sword sect, "Is this the mirage image you want?" Then, he rolled out a jade slip condensed from his thought and spiritual power and flew to the first elder of the Luo Shao sword sect. The first elder caught it in his hand. Immediately, a picture appeared in his mind. It was the mirage image that he wanted. It was complete and clear. Su Fang, thank you very much. My Luo Shao divine sword is yours. The first elder of the Luo Shao sword sect was pleasantly surprised. He took out a king-grade Xian sword with an ancient aura. Who knew Su Fang waved his hand and took the Luo Shao divine sword back. I am indebted to the Luo Shao sword sect, and I am friends with Xu Chong Shao of the Luo Shao sword sect. For this mirage image, the first elder can give me 1,000 peak supreme grade elixirs. I will not accept your natal Xianbao. How can this be? If it were not for the mirage image, how could the first elder of the Luo Shao sword sect be willing to give up his natal Xianbao? He did not expect that Su Fang would only accept 1,000 peak supreme grade elixirs. How could the first elder of the Luo Shao sword sect not be surprised? Although 1,000 peak supreme grade elixirs was not a small number, it was nothing compared to the mirage image. It was no different from giving it away for free. The first elder of the Luo Shao sword sect took back his Xian sword and took out 5,000 peak supreme grade elixirs. This was all he had. Chapter 3063. The other Dao Void Realm experts looked at the Luo Shao sword sect's great elder with envy and jealousy. At the same time, they also admired Su Fang. Especially Supreme Martial Artist Spring Autumn and Great Elder Zhangsun of the three highest profound sects. There were so many mirage images that appeared in the second heaven tide, and many of them were extremely important to them, Heaven Pavilion, and the three highest profound sects. Although they tried their best to memorize them, it was a pity that some of the mirage images were difficult to memorize with their strength. However, not only did they not have any friendship with Su Fang, there was also an unresolvable enmity between them. Naturally, it was difficult for them to ask Su Fang for those mirage images. Su Fang suddenly transmitted his thoughts to the two of them. I am also a disciple of Dongxian Daozu. I will directly hand over the mirage images that are useful to Heaven Pavilion to Master Daozu. As for those from the three highest profound sects, I will give them to Gu Tianqi. Supreme Martial Artist Spring Autumn and Great Elder Zhangsun were shocked, pleasantly surprised, and then extremely ashamed. The two of them cupped their fists and bowed respectfully to Su Fang at the same time. Su Fang, do you have the mirage images of that divine realm foreign race artifact refiner refining the Xian Bao? A Dao Void Realm cultivator suddenly asked. This Dao Void Realm expert came from a rather famous artifact refiner sect in the entire Jiuquan divine region. Moreover, he cultivated the Dao of artifact refinement. Naturally, he wanted to obtain the mirage images that were related to artifact refinement. Of course. Su Fang nodded and said. Then, he looked at the other Dao Void Realm expert. I, Su Fang, have everything that you don't have. Whoosh! Everyone was shocked. Other than the 5 divine tribes of Middle Mystery and the other forces that had a grudge against Su Fang, the other Dao Void Realm cultivators all surrounded Su Fang's thought image. Next, Su Fang used hundreds of mirage images to exchange for a large amount of treasures and resources. However, Su Fang did not demand an exorbitant price. The mirage image that the weapon refining sect wanted, Su Fang only asked them to help him refine a profound artifact, and the materials were all provided by Su Fang himself. It was the pair of forelimbs of the ice praying mantis that he had obtained in the Ice Soul sacred region. The treasures and resources that they obtained from trading with other Void Dao experts were all things that they could afford, and would not hurt them at all. Ling Xiao and the other Void Dao experts of the Wine Saint Peak, as well as the Void Dao experts of the Heaven Breaking Peak, Su Fang even gave them away for free. Of course, it wasn't because Su Fang had suddenly become generous. It was because he knew very well that if he extorted these Void Dao experts too ruthlessly, they would surely bear a grudge against Su Fang. Not only did these Void Dao experts possess shocking strength, they also represented the various great powers of the human race. If he completely offended all of them, then it would be difficult for him to move a single step in the Jiuquan God domain in the future. If he obtained too many treasures, it would also attract the envy of countless people, and there would certainly be endless troubles in the future. Another reason was the words that Xian Daozu said before he left. The eruption of the chaos tide this time belonged to the entire human race, and Su Fang did not dare to monopolize it alone. That would damage his own luck. Rather than that, it was better to give away half of those mirage images. Not only would he gain the favor of many experts and forces, making them owe him a big favor, it would also be a great help to the human race. Although Su Fang did not demand an exorbitant price, there were many Void Dao experts. Together, Su Fang would obtain a shocking amount of treasures and resources. With such a large number of benefits, why wouldn't Su Fang be happy? After trading with many Void Dao experts, they were all delighted, and many Void Dao experts were endlessly grateful to Su Fang. The Void Dao experts of the 5 great god tribes of Middle Xian, Qi Tian Divine Region, Hong Tian Divine Region, and Coffin Young Master were all extremely jealous. It was not that they did not want to trade with Su Fang, but they knew that with Su Fang's character, even if they offered great benefits, he would not trade with them. Moreover, these people had other plans in mind. If they could suppress Su Fang, wouldn't the treasures, resources, and the mirage images that he had memorized be easily obtained? Especially Hu Lingyi, Yi Wuji, Coffin Young Master, and the others, their eyes were filled with greed and killing intent when they looked at Su Fang. While Su Fang was trading with the Void Dao experts, many Dao saints at the highest point of the tide-observing pavilion were also trading, each taking what they needed. This saint needs the mirage images of those peak Dao saints when they were comprehending the astronomical phenomena. I wonder if anyone can memorize that mirage. This saint will exchange it with great treasures. When Yin Patian mentioned the mirage images that he wanted, the Dao saints immediately fell silent. In the time mirage that appeared when the second heaven tide erupted, there were many mirages of foreign race Dao saints fighting and cultivating. However, the Dao saints present were all focused on memorizing those that were related to their own cultivation. They did not have the time to be distracted by other mirages. Yin Patian cultivated the great Dao of formless. The mirage images of peak Dao saints comprehending the astronomical phenomena were of great help to his cultivation, but it might not be useful to other Dao saints. Yin Patian was greatly disappointed. The red-haired middle-aged man from Qi Tian Divine Region suddenly spoke. This seat coincidentally remembered some of it. Although it is not complete, it will definitely be of great use to you. Yin Patian was pleasantly surprised. Is that so? The red-haired middle-aged man smiled. Why would this seat lie to you? However, if you want that mirage, you will have to pay a corresponding price. According to this seat's knowledge, you have a talisman that Lord Daozu of Shixian personally created. And this seat cultivates talismans? Ji Dao, you took out a Daozu talisman? This seat will give you the mirage, how about it? Yin Potion's divine light changed instantly. Before he could speak, the head elder of punishments roared, Yin Patian, you must not. That talisman of yours? It contains the true meaning of Supreme Shixian's great Dao. It is more important than a king-grade Xian Bao. How can you take it out to trade? This saint knows what to do. There is no need for head elder of punishments to remind me. Yin Patian snorted coldly. Then, he said decisively to the red-haired middle-aged man from Qi Tian Divine Region, change your conditions. The talisman that Master gave me? This saint will not give it to anyone else. That's a pity. The red-haired middle-aged man chuckled, and had no intention of continuing the trade. He was clearly interested in the talisman that Shixian Daozu had created. He was determined to get it and use it to threaten Yin Patian. Yin Patian could only sigh helplessly. Tua Qianji suddenly said, Yin Patian, according to this seat's knowledge, you and Su Fang are martial brothers and have an extraordinary relationship. Why don't you ask if Su Fang has it? Yin Patian was dazed. Su Fang? The red-haired Dao saint from Qi Tian Divine Region sneered. Su Fang is just a Dao profound cultivator. He can also comprehend a Dao saint-level mirage? Hu Po and the Yi clan Dao saints sneered in disdain. Tua Qianji said, I saw the light circle that appeared when Su Fang was comprehending the nightmare statue. It was only broken at the last moment. He might have a Tao Saint-level mirage, or even a Tao Ancestor-level mirage. He might even have it. How is that possible? The Dao Saints all shook their heads and laughed. Little junior brother, please come up. Yin Patian sent a message to Su Fang. Su Fang's main body flew out of the Fuyao cave and came to the highest point of the tide viewing pavilion. Without waiting for Su Fang to bow to the sovereign and the others, Patian asked impatiently. Su Fang, senior brother wants to ask you, which Tao Saint level mirage did you comprehend? Su Fang shook his head and smiled. Patian couldn't help but be disappointed. Who knew that Su Fang would continue to ask? Those Tao Saint level mirage images are all in my head. Does senior brother Patian want them all or just one of them? All the Tao Saints were dazed and then sneered in disdain. They obviously thought that Su Fang was boasting. Patian held on to a glimmer of hope. Senior brother, I only need the mirage image of the peak Tao Saint level. Senior brother, please accept it. Su Fang condensed the mirage image into a rune talisman and gave it to Patian. Patian grabbed it and was instantly overjoyed. The image in the jade scroll was not only clear but also complete. Compared to the incomplete mirage that the red-haired Tao Saint from Qi Tian Divine Region had mentioned, the quality was definitely several times higher. This time, all the Tao Saints were moved. They looked at Su Fang with shock and disbelief. Patian was overjoyed and asked, Little junior brother, tell me what you want. Su Fang said decisively, I obtained these mirage images without any effort. Since they are useful to senior brother, how can I ask senior brother for anything? Senior brother, I won't be polite with you. Patian laughed happily, causing many Tao Saints to be filled with jealousy. The red-haired old man from Qi Tian Divine Region looked at Su Fang with green eyes. He wanted nothing more than to swallow Su Fang whole. At the same time, everyone was shocked. Su Fang was able to comprehend such a high level of time mirage, and from the looks of it, he seemed to have most of it. Thus, everyone looked at Su Fang with burning eyes. The first elder of punishments shouted at Su Fang, the time mirages you obtained should all belong to Xixian Mountain. How can you trade them with others so casually? Although Patian is an elder of Xixian Mountain, you should first give them to the sect before the sect gives them to him. How can you give them to him without permission? What do you think of the sect? I gave all the mirages I obtained to the sect? Su Fang couldn't help but chuckle, and then he asked in reply, the punishment elder comprehended many mirages as well. I wonder if you handed them over to the sect first, or did you make a deal with other experts? The first elder of punishments was speechless. Just as Su Fang had said, he had indeed obtained many high-level mirages. Moreover, he had traded with other Tao Saints and gained a lot. Su Fang had been holding back his anger at the punishment hall for a long time. If he didn't vent it now, when would he? He continued aggressively, the mirages I obtained should be given to the sect, but the first elder of punishments can trade with others. Could it be that the sect's laws are set for Su Fang alone and only bind Su Fang? The first elder of punishments was suppressed by Su Fang. He quibbled, I am the first elder of punishments and am in charge of Xixian Mountain's punishments. Chapter 3064. The first elder of punishments was speechless. Back then, the punishment hall went too far and didn't even give me a token. Now you want to take the mirage that I worked so hard to get from me. Isn't that laughable? Su Fang was unforgiving. His sharp words made the first elder of punishment's face pale, but he could not refute him. That day in the punishment hall, I said in front of everyone that I am representing Su Fang in the Chaos Tide treasure hunt. Therefore, I will not hand over any of the treasures I get. Including you, the first elder of punishments. Don't even think about getting a single treasure from me. Su Fang said domineeringly. His voice showed the power of a strong cultivator. Su Fang, don't forget that you are now a cultivator of Xixian Mountain unless you want to betray Xixian. The first elder of punishments was angry and used his identity to suppress Su Fang. At this time, the sovereign who had been silent suddenly said, Junior brother Su Fang, if this sovereign wants to make a deal with you, are you willing? A deal? Even the sovereign proposed to make a deal with Su Fang instead of directly asking for it. This surprised Patian and the other Xixian Tao Saint. The first elder of punishments felt like he had been slapped in the face and had to shut up again. In terms of cultivation, the first elder of punishments was a bit higher than the sovereign. In terms of status, he was the first elder. If the three first elders worked together, they could even depose the sovereign. However, the sovereign controlled the entire Shixian mountain and had real power. In the future, he might surpass the peak of Dao Saint and become a Daozu. The first elder of punishments did not have this possibility. Now that the sovereign came out, he was clearly speaking for Su Fang. The first elder of punishments realized that he thought the sovereign was purposely suppressing Su Fang. Now it seemed that he was wrong. Su Fang sent a message to the sovereign. What kind of mirage does senior brother sovereign want? The sovereign's eyes flashed. This sovereign needs the mirage of the Daozu. Do you have it? Of course there is. Not only this mirage, but the other two mirages of Daozu, refining pills and treasures, are all in my memories. When the heavenly tide is over, I will naturally give them all to senior brother sovereign. Is that true? The sovereign's eyes lit up and he asked, "What are your conditions?" Su Fang replied, "The Shixian mountain is Master's Shixian mountain, and you are my senior martial brother. It is only right that I offer the three mirages to senior martial brother. Why would I mention any conditions? I only hope that senior brother sovereign won't punish me by standing in the future. If everyone in the Western Mystery Mountain thinks that senior brother sovereign is suppressing me, then I, junior brother, will be satisfied." "Brat, it seems you understand Master's intentions. I just didn't expect you to hold a grudge, hee." The sovereign chuckled. "Leng Qingyue will be your concubine. Are you satisfied now?" The sovereign looked at Su Fang and shook his head with a smile. Then he disappeared into the void and left the tide-watching pavilion. "Let Ling Qingyue be my concubine?" Thinking of that arrogant woman, Su Fang felt a chill down his spine. Su Fang. The Hu people's Dao Saint, Hu Po, looked at Su Fang and said. Su Fang said indifferently, "What is it?" Hu Po said, "As long as you give the three mirages of the Daozu experts to the Hu people, this seat promises you that the Hu people will not make things difficult for you in the future. Hu people will not pursue the matter of you killing the only son of my clan leader, Hu Yufei, and destroying Hu Ditian's body." The Daozu mirages? Impossible. Even us Dao saints can't comprehend the three Daozu mirages. Su Fang is just a Dao profound cultivator. How can he memorize the Daozu mirages? The other Dao saints were all shocked and surprised. They found it hard to believe that Su Fang had the mirages of the Daozu expert. Su Fang smiled noncommittally. Hu Po said coldly, "Don't even think about denying it. What else could make the sovereign so excited other than the three Daozu experts' mirages? Although this seat doesn't know what method you used, you must have memorized the three Daozu mirages." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All the Dao saints looked at Su Fang. Even the first elder of punishments looked at Su Fang with a burning gaze. The mirages of normal Dao saints were not very useful to them. As for the other mirages, with their strength, they would be able to comprehend them on their own or obtain them from other Dao saints. The mirages of the Daozu experts were very important to the cultivation of these Dao saints. Unfortunately, no one could comprehend them. How could the Dao saints not be surprised that Su Fang had the mirages of the Daozu experts? Su Fang looked at Hu Po and said coldly, "Hu people will not pursue the matter if I take out the mirages? Lord Hu Po, are you begging me or threatening me?" Hu Po said domineeringly, "Hu people never beg others when they want a treasure." Su Fang laughed coldly. "It seems like you are threatening me? I have indeed comprehended the mirages of the Daozu expert. However, why should I give it to Hu people? I, Su Fang, am least afraid of threat. I was not afraid when I was in the central profound divine territory. Why should I be afraid now?" Hu Po's expression darkened. He said darkly, "Do you know the consequences of rejecting Hu people? Hu Po, don't forget that this is the Western profound divine territory. Patian shouted angrily at Hu Po. The other Tao saints of the western profound mountain looked at Hu Po with unfriendly expressions. Tua Qianji also said coldly, Hu Po, don't forget that Su Fang is the disciple of Dongxian Supreme. If you dare to do anything to him, the eastern profound divine territory will not let Hu people off easily. Hu Po snorted. It was obvious that he did not take the threats of the Tao saints seriously. Su Fang looked at Hu Po and said coldly, if I use the mirages of the Daozu experts as the price to ask the Tao saints to kill Lord Hu Po, I think many Tao saints will rush to kill you, won't they? As soon as he said this, some of the Tao saints looked at Hu Po with unfriendly gazes. Hu Po's expression changed instantly. He said angrily, Su Fang, you are just a small Tao profound cultivator. How dare you threaten me? Su Fang said, how the Hu people treated me, I, Su Fang, will return it tenfold. As long as the Hu people can do it, I, Su Fang, can do it too. If you don't believe me, Lord Hu Po, why don't you try? Hu Po's face darkened. He did not say anything else. Right at this moment, Xianjing spoke out, Su Fang, which one of those alien Tao fathers did you comprehend was that mirage? If it is useful to me, I will not be stingy with my treasures. Su Fang smiled embarrassedly. The mirage that I saw was the Daozu refining pills. I am afraid it is not useful to Lord Xianjing. Of course, he had to hide some of it. He could not take it all out. Otherwise, he would become a piece of meat in the eyes of these Tao saints. He would not be able to live a peaceful life in the future. The other Tao saints were also disappointed. It was obvious that the mirage was not useful to them. The Yi Clan Tao saint asked in surprise, Su Fang, did you really refine the mirage of the Daozu into pills? The Yi Clan was best at pills and talismans? It was no wonder that he was so eager. Of course, Su Fang said confidently. Then, he smiled embarrassedly. Could it be that the Yi clan wants to be like Lord Hu Po and threaten me to hand over the mirage? The Yi clan Tao saint said, the Yi clan has always been peaceful and fair. Why would we threaten you? If you really have that mirage, I promise that not only will I forget all the grievances between you and the Yi clan, you can also ask for any other conditions. This Tao saint clearly understood that using force against Su Fang would not work. He could only use soft method. Thus, he appeared very sincere. Su Fang was surprised. At this moment, Patian sent a message to Su Fang. Su Fang, why don't you agree to the Yi clan's terms? If you do not hand over the mirage, the Yi clan will not give up. They can even take the chance to ask for some benefits. Fine. Su Fang thought for a while and said decisively, since the Yi clan is so sincere, it would be unreasonable of me to not agree. I don't want any other treasures. I only want the drop of Daozu's blood that Yi Wuji obtained from the chaos tide. Su Fang had his eyes on that drop of Daozu's blood long ago. Unfortunately, it was taken away by Yi Wuji. Now that the Yi clan had delivered themselves to him, how could he not take the chance to ask for more? The Yi clan's Tao saint frowned. Daozu's blood was obtained by Yi Wuji. I cannot take it from him. Su Fang continued, I still have 3 mirages of foreign Tao saints cultivating and refining pills. They are all at the peak of the Tao saint stage. I can take them all out in exchange for that drop of Daozu's blood. If the Yi clan does not agree, then I have nothing to say. Deal. The Yi clan's Tao saint's eyes flashed. He immediately agreed and then sent a message to Yi Wuji. Soon, Yi Wuji arrived at the highest point of the tide-observing pavilion. Yi Wuji was filled with joy when he obtained that drop of Daozu's blood. However, when he heard that the Yi clan's Tao saint wanted him to take out the blood to exchange for the mirage with Su Fang, Yi Wuji felt as if he had been doused in ice water. His entire body turned cold. Yi Wuji, I know that doing this will put you in a difficult position. However, the mirage of the foreign race's Tao ancestor refining pills is very important to the Yi clan. It is even related to the rise and fall of the Yi clan. Moreover, there are also 3 mirages of the foreign races peak Dao Saint experts cultivating and refining pills. With these mirages, the supernatural powers and pills of our clan will definitely improve tremendously. It is not impossible for us to use this opportunity to surpass the Hu clan. The Yi clan's Dao Saint sent a message to Yi Wuji. After a round of persuasion, Yi Wuji could only grit his teeth and take out that drop of Daozu's blood. Su Fang handed a total of 4 jade scrolls to the Yi clan's Dao Saint. Then, he took the drop of Daozu's blood. After obtaining such a powerful treasure, Su Fang was overjoyed. The Yi clan's Dao Saint was also very satisfied. He nodded at Su Fang and smiled. Only Yi Wuji felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. He hated Su Fang to the bone. Su Fang took Daozu's blood and flew down to the spell altar.